As someone who watches a lot of movies, it's rare for me to actually sit down and watch a TV show, and out of the ones I have seen, there aren't too many that I really connect to on an emotional level. Don't get me wrong, I find enjoyment in a lot of them, there's just few that I really see myself in. Some of these include Scrubs, The Office, BoJack, sort of shows like that I really enjoy. But recently I've been watching a show that is honestly one of my new favorite shows, and I don't think many people have heard of it based on the ratings. This show has quickly become one of the best shows I have ever seen. What is this show, you're wondering? Well, this show is Zack Stone is Gonna Be Famous.
Zack Stone is gonna be famous. Zack Stone is gonna be famous. Zack Stone is gonna be famous. Zack Stone is gonna be famous. Zack Stone. Zack Stone.
Zack Stone is Gonna Be Famous was an American teen sitcom created by Bo Burnham and Dan Lagana. It aired on MTV in 2013 from the 2nd of May to the 29th of June. The single-camera sitcom stars Bo Burnham as Zack Stone, a fresh out of high school teenager who, instead of doing what everyone else is doing and going to college, opts to pursue a life in fame and stardom, even though he has no real talents. As part of his dream to become famous, Zack hires a camera crew to follow him around on his daily life, kinda like things like the Kardashians. As we'll see once we dive into each episode, Zack goes to extreme lengths to try to be famous because that's all he really wants. This includes becoming a celebrity chef to creating ringtones to purposely going missing. The show takes place over the summer break and he uses this as his time frame to get noticed and hang out with his friends before they all go to college.
Zack Stone is gonna be famous.
In September of 2010, Variety magazine reported that MTV had ordered a pilot from Bo Burnham about a kid fresh out of high school who's pursuing the American dream of becoming a celebrity despite having no talent. The show was inspired by a study that polled graduating students and possible career paths for them in the future. 40% of these students chose to be famous, as opposed to the extraordinarily low numbers of more realistic choices such as becoming a doctor. The pilot was filmed in 2011, while the rest of the season was filmed over the course of 2012, and it was scheduled for a 2013 release. Burnham initially saw the show as a dark satirical sitcom that slammed the main character for having shallow priorities, but grew to see the character as more of a product of the culture surrounding him. The show spoofs youth culture and the need to be seen and become famous, which is still really relevant today, if not more than it was back in 2013. Throughout the series, Zack projects the image he thinks will make him most famous and casts a shadow on his true personality, when in reality he's completely insecure, and this idea of fame creates a fix-all idea for him. The show was primarily inspired by comedy shows such as the UK version of The Office, which Bo Burnham considers one of his favourite shows of all time, stating in an interview that he watches it from start to finish at least once a year.
Zack Stone is gonna be famous.
Let's move on quickly to the casting characters, which there aren't too many of, so it's not really that hard to follow on with their personal stories and their development, as well as their relationship with Zack. The major characters here include Zack Stone, played by Bo Burnham. Zack's longtime best friend Amy Page is played by Caitlin Gerald. Armin Weitzman plays Greg LeBlanc. Zack's family includes his aggravated father Drew Stone, played by Tom Wilson, his patient mother Sydney Stone, played by Kerry Coleman, and Zack's younger, more athletic, socially popular brother Andy is played by Cameron Pilatus. Rory Scovel plays Pat, Zack's nervous yet caring boss at his job. Robbie Amell plays Nick, Amy's charismatic boyfriend and personal trainer at the gym, who Zack will end up seeing as his rival. Shelley Henning plays Christy Ackerman, the hottest girl in Zack's former high school who wants to use him to get famous. And finally, it's worth noting Zack's camera crew. Jason Rogel as Marcus, Justin Dre as Philip, and Ashad Aslam as Hassad. Some characters do get more screen time than others. Zack, Drew, Sydney, Andy, Greg, and Amy all appear in 12 out of 12 of the episodes. Nick is in 8, Pat is in 6, Christy is in 4, and as for the camera crew, Philip is in 11, Hassad is in 9, and Marcus is in 8. These characters I just listed, despite having smaller roles, are arguably just as important. Now that you've got a rough idea of this show and the characters you're about to see, let's jump into Zack Stone is Gonna Be Famous episode by episode, as I show you why this is the best show you've never seen.
Zack Stone is gonna be famous. 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 Zack Stone. Zack Stone.
Episode 1 of the series, The Pilot, starts with Bo Burnham's Zack Stone getting out of bed after supposedly falling asleep while reading the dictionary. And already we're given a sense of what this show is going to be like throughout its runtime. Zach gives some exposition as to why he's being filmed, and in this shot we see boom arms, we see cameramen in mirrors, and it really shows how underprepared and underqualified he is to be doing this, which in a way makes it more charming. Zach Stone graduated from high school yesterday and claims that today is the first day of the rest of his life. This is where we get this episode's title sequence. Each title sequence of the show is slightly different depending on what the episode is about. It's always tailored to be something regarding the episode, like being an actor or being a chef. Spoiler alert. Although this one, since it's the pilot, doesn't really have a shtick, it's just an intro to the show, rather than an intro to the episode. After this, we see Zach in his room showing off all of his trophies, showboating his accomplishments to the camera. This is where Zach's younger brother Andy, played by Cameron Pilatus, comes in and asks why he's in his room. We end up seeing Andy a lot throughout the series. He appears in 12 out of 12 of the episodes, and as I mentioned before, he's Zach's younger, more athletic, more popular brother, who, as we see later on, is more likely to succeed and accomplish things compared to Zach. Back to the scene, Zach has put some tape over Andy's many celebrity posters' eyes to avoid clearance issues when this show becomes a hit. Zach heads downstairs and we see how clumsy and careless he is when he jumps down the stairs and this happens.
Hanging with Zach.
In the kitchen, Zach is telling the cameras about how lucky he is to have two loving and supportive parents. This is where we're introduced to Sydney Stone, Zach's supportive and forgiving mother, played by Carrie Coleman. The camera then pans across the table and introduces us to Drew Stone, Zach's aggravated father, played by Tom Wilson, who you may know from a little couple of movies called Back to the Future. Now, 2 minutes into the episode, we've met 4 out of the 6 what I'd like to call main characters. I'm calling everybody who appears in 12 out of 12 of the episodes main characters, although you could interpret some of the side characters we're going to be introduced to as main characters. Already, we can tell the sort of bond between Zach and his family. Andy finds Zach annoying and vice versa. Sydney is weary of this whole reality TV show idea, but ultimately supports Zach because it's his dream. Whereas Drew takes a more aggravated approach, going straight into listing all of Zach's bad qualities over his good ones, and even pushing him to go to college, which becomes a major character trait for Drew in the rest of the show. The family are all trying to have a normal breakfast and talk about Zach's future, but he's more worried about the angle his mum is standing and how he looks on camera. Sydney gets a phone call in which she learns that ex-step-grandma Susan has passed away. Zach doesn't know who that is and says he's going to take his reaction again. He thinks it'll be better for the cameras if he redid his reaction in a more emotional way. Zach already seems to be really passionate about making this TV show and becoming famous, but we're introduced already to his major character flaw. He can't seem to separate Zach Stone from the Zach Stone that's being put on camera. Zach, now in his car, is telling the camera how the funeral is going to be a big opportunity for him. With such an exclusive group of people in the audience, what better place for him to display his talents? He's interrupted by a knock on the window. This knock came from Amy Page, Zach's longtime best friend, played by Caitlin Gerald. He speeds off after realizing who it is. Zach explains to the camera that the girl he just sped away from was his good friend Amy, and the reason he left so fast is because he doesn't see how she could fit on the show. Zach and Amy have been really close friends since a very young age, and for Zach to just ignore her because she doesn't fit into this show really shows the type of person Zach is. Zach Stone just wants to be seen, he wants to be famous, and he doesn't care who he loses in order to get there. Zach then introduces the camera to his best friend, Greg LeBlanc, played by Armin Weitzman. We get a brief introduction to his character and his bond with Zach. Greg seems very nervous when Zach is retelling these events from high school, mainly because they're all false. He's exaggerating all of them to seem better for the camera. Now that we've met Zach, Drew, Sydney, Andy, Amy, and Greg, we've been introduced to the 6 what I'd call main characters. We have seen the cameramen briefly in the mirror reflection, but I wouldn't count them as main characters. Despite appearing behind the camera in every episode, they do get a bigger role later on where they will be in front of the camera, but I'll cover that when we get to it. Zach is supposed to be out buying stuff for the funeral, but instead he's gone to Greg's. Not the shop, his friend's house. Andy saw Zach's car parked at Greg's house and told their mum. She invites Zach to do a short, minute-long reading at the funeral tomorrow. This is really great news for Zach. He wanted to use this funeral as a form of exposure in a weird, twisted way, and now it's all coming true. Zach rushes to his car so he can drive home and prepare his act for tomorrow. But when he gets in the car, he sees Amy in the passenger seat. Zach panics and tells the camera crew to cut the cameras. Amy asks Zach why he's been so distant recently. He lists off a bunch of excuses, but then reveals that he wants to get famous before Amy and Greg go to college, because if he doesn't, he feels he'll be stuck where he is now for the rest of his life. So maybe Zach isn't as bad of a person we've seen so far. His desire to be seen is not only his passion, but his last glimpse of hope. He doesn't want college, he wants fame. But he also wants the people in his life to stay. And he knows they won't because in a couple of months they'll be gone. Zach is now following the list of errands he has to run before the funeral. But Zach doesn't think it's big enough, so he gets double the flowers. Zach seems to be treating this loved one's death as more of a party. So much, in fact, that he feels the need to bring a date. And this is where we're introduced to the, quote, hottest girl in the school, Christy Ackerman, played by Shelley Henning. While standing outside of her place of work, Zach finds Christy on Facebook to find out as much about her as possible. He goes in to talk to Christy, who clearly has no idea who he is, let alone any interest of being his date. That is, until she notices the cameras. Zach explains that he's making a TV show, and this is what sparks her interest. Zach uses what he found on Facebook to relate to Christy, those being Diet Dr. Pepper, liking Nicki Minaj, and disliking 9/11. Zach mentions the party and invites Christy, who is hesitant until she looks at the cameras. After this scene, we clearly know what type of person Christy is. She clearly has no interest in Zach whatsoever and is only going to use him to become famous. Zach, on the other hand, seems to genuinely want to be with Christy, partially because she's the hottest girl in their former high school, and having a hot girl by his side will, in his opinion, make it easier to become famous. Zach gets home and Drew is furious, because everything Zach bought for the funeral was off of his credit card. And the dozen roses are all dead, so he's extra mad. Zach speaks to Andy, who is writing a poem for the funeral. Zach thinks he's just opening up for his big act, but Andy reveals he's now the one doing the reading. Andy tells Zach the truth about what these cameras are turning Zach into, and that's why his parents gave Andy the reading instead of Zach. He confronts his parents about this and apologizes. Sydney tells him to put himself in the shoes of the people who just lost this loved one. And he sees this as an opportunity to make a room full of sad people happy, which I guess isn't a bad idea, but as always, there's a time and a place for comedy, and a funeral isn't that time, nor is it the place. But Zach doesn't think this, and dresses up as a grandmother, not unlike his recently deceased grandmother. Speaking through the bathroom door, Drew thinks he may have underestimated Zach, but is shocked to say the least when Zach opens the door to reveal he's dressed like an elderly woman. Drew kicks Zach and the camera crew out of the house. Luckily, Zach has time to do a quick impersonation of his deceased relative in front of a room of heartbroken relatives. This upsets Zach, who drives over to Greg's with Amy in the back seat. She's not happy at Zach for making her sit in the back seat since Zach doesn't want her in the show. She demands Zach to stop the car and the two of them get out. She's fed up with Zach not letting her be on camera, and they have this truthful, heartful argument about the topic. Zach says these cameras are a big way for him to change everything in his life, and Amy is something that shouldn't be changed. Out of all the relationships in his life, Amy is the only one that seems perfect enough to be unedited. Zach admits that he feels the cameras are making him choose between the people he loves, like his family, Amy and Greg, and the things that he loves, like becoming famous and being seen. Zach surprises the family at the funeral, but not in the way they were expecting, in a black suit and a tie. However, Sydney reveals that amidst all the commotion, they forgot to book a priest, so she asks Zach if he could do his reading. Of course, he says yes to this and puts on a whole wildly inappropriate show. He starts rapping, dancing, telling jokes, and no one in the audience is enjoying it, except for Christy, who gets an evil eye from Amy, potentially setting up a rivalry later on in the show. Upon looking at a photo of Susan and grasping the audience reaction, Zach realizes that what he's doing isn't what he should be doing. He talks about cherishing people while you still can, because they could leave at any minute. Zach's biggest example of this is Amy, who throughout the episode we see very clearly that Zach doesn't want to live without her. The real priest gets there, so Zach ends his beautiful speech with confetti. Zach sees this whole funeral experience as a big win, and as a talking head, says to the camera,
I'm Zach Stone, and the world may not know it yet, but, I'm gonna be famous.
And that ends the pilot episode. Personally, I was hooked from this episode, but I could see some people maybe not being so interested in it just yet. So if you're one of those people and you're up to this point, just stick with it because it does just keep going up and up. Here we got introduced to the 6 main characters, and we got to see the type of role they're going to play in both the show and Zach's life. This episode premiered on MTV with 650,000 viewers, but the view count only went downhill from there. But the quality definitely did not.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
At the start of episode 2, Zach tells us that it's his second week at attempting to become famous. This gives us a rough time frame for the show, with each episode taking place more or less a week after the last. Inside, Zach seems happier than usual, although Drew seems angry at Zach because he came home late last night and the sound of the garage door opening woke him up. When Drew tells Zach that he needs to be home at an appropriate time every night, Zach goes on about how rules don't apply to him since he isn't a, quote, normal person. He's a celebrity. He goes as far as comparing himself to Willow Smith, who he thinks doesn't have rules to follow. Sydney and Andy both enter the room and have similar reactions to seeing a team of cameramen in their kitchen. Sydney states that she doesn't think she's appropriately dressed to be on camera, and Drew takes a more aggressive approach and implies that he believes Zach will never become famous. Sydney tells the family that they have a Christmas card photo shoot coming up, to which Andy asks why they're having to take Christmas photos in June. This confirms what I said earlier about the show taking place in real time. Each episode covers about a week of Zach's life and takes place in June, when the show was released back in 2013. Sydney states that the reason they're having a Christmas photo shoot in June is because they booked the session with Zach going to college in mind, since that's what the whole family expected from him, instead of making his own version of the Kardashians. This creates an awkward silence at the dinner table, until Zach breaks that silence with the idea he's going to use this week to become famous.
Zach Stone is gonna be a famous recording artist, and everyone will love him. He doesn't have any musical background, but he wrote this song, and this song's pretty awesome. Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Zach goes over to Greg's, with who he shares his songwriting ideas with. They brainstorm for a little bit. Greg even has the Wikipedia page for music open on his computer. All their ideas are more or less the same. Zach seems to be exaggerating events from the past to sound cooler. They brainstorm songs about sex, girls, clubs, and vodka, and clearly neither of them know how to write a hit song, as we can now see by the overflowing bin with paper. Although around the room we see a guitar, a microphone and a keyboard, and an audio mixer. It isn't clear whether or not Zach and Greg owned these before, or they bought them just for this. In the next scene, Zach and Amy are at a donut shop when Christy walks in. She looks at the cameras a bunch, which confirms her obsession with them, and disrespects Amy by calling her Alice. Christy asks Zach when they're hanging out next, and Zach says he's not doing anything now, despite being out with Amy. This doesn't work for Christy though because of work, which is probably for the best because Amy is visibly uncomfortable and understandably doesn't like this situation. If you remember in the last episode, Amy has already shown some disinterest towards Christy, so this further sets up the potential rivalry we may see in the future. Amy and Zach talk about Christy during the car ride home, and Amy expresses her feelings about Christy. She thinks it's pretty obvious that Christy is only paying attention to Zach because of the cameras, which Zach finds exciting. He says that no hot girl has ever paid attention to him the way Christy is now, which upsets Amy. Clearly, throughout their lifelong friendship, Amy has at times wanted something more out of it, and chances are Zach has at some point wanted the same. Amy is now furious with Zach, so she turns up the radio to block him out, and then changes the station. Zach asks Amy why she changed the station during the middle of a song, to which she replies it's the only part in the song she actually likes. Zach sees this as a brilliant idea. If people choose to listen to small sections of the song, why bother making the full song? Away from the show for a second, I related this idea of enjoying a small section of a single song to Bo Burnham's song, Repeat Stuff. Repeat Stuff released in 2013 from his stand-up special, What? This special debuted in December of 2013, so there is a high chance that Bo borrowed some of the concepts from this episode and made a song about them. Repeat Stuff talks about how love songs are mainly there for their catchy choruses, and everything else in between is just repeated rubbish that every other song spits out. But because the chorus is so catchy, you'll listen to the full song and learn to love it, despite only really wanting to listen to it because of said chorus. There's no proof that I could find that Bo actually got this concept for Repeat Stuff from this episode, but honestly, I wouldn't blame him. Because in a world full of short-form content, people's attention spans go like that. There's probably a handful of people who started this video and have since turned it off and are no longer here because I failed to catch their attention. Whereas if I had just picked the best part of this video to show, maybe more people would have stayed for the full thing. Anyway, back to Zach Stone, who on a high from this genius idea rushes out of the car and heads to Greg's work. Zach plays him a 12-second song he made, which Greg likes and wants to hear the rest. This is where Zach reveals to Greg that he's only trying to make the good parts of the songs. Greg doesn't really understand this idea and just assumed Zach was showing him a ringtone rather than a full song. Greg saying this makes Zach scream in excitement.
Yeah!
We cut to Zach now working at a grocery store. This is Zach's main place of work and becomes a reoccurring set throughout the show. He's working behind the counter at the checkout and is giving customers cards and telling them to listen to his ringtones. The customer he gives it to immediately throws it in the bin while he's watching, which is sad for Zach, but it's funny for us. And here we're introduced to Pat, Zach's nervous yet caring boss, played by Rory Scovel. From what we can tell already, Pat is a sweet guy. He appears in 6 out of 12 of the episodes, but he does play a major part in Zach's life. He's almost like the fun uncle character to Zach, despite being his boss and not his uncle. Throughout the show, we see Pat support Zach. In this episode, he even goes as far to letting Zach use the PA system to play his ringtones during the workday. Zach does so, and the overall consensus of the music from the customers, not good. Zach believes that the reason his music wasn't a hit at the supermarket was because it was full of old people, so he thinks it's time to connect with the youth more because they're more likely to buy music, which I guess is accurate. And who better to represent young people than Zach's younger brother, Andy? Zach hands Andy a handful of business cards and tells him to give them around to his young friends, and then plays him an example of one of these jingles that are targeted towards the more younger generation.
I wanna text with you. I wanna text with you. I want a text message with you. Cause we're the teenage demographic, and that's what teenagers do.
Andy wants rid of him and shows him what real music sounds like, which is just some rap about Sprite.
Make sure to give me all the credit I deserve. Make sure the good stuff's still in that Sprite. They watch it.
It does sound a lot cooler than mine.
Sydney and Drew come in and ask Zach to try on a sweater for the Christmas photos, and to go trim the hedges once he's done. Zach sees this as an opportunity to change his personality into a more bad boy type person. He changes up his personality and style and then just completely disrespects his parents and then heads outside to his car, which just so happens to be at the same time Amy is jogging past. Zach apologizes to Amy for almost blowing her off to go hang out with Christy. All is forgiven and they're back on good terms. Amy asks Zach if she wants to hang out, but Zach says he can't because he's meeting up with Christy. The two meet at a frozen yogurt place and Christy loves Zach's new style. She notices Zach is wearing one of those candy rings around his neck, but she does this. I don't think I'm allowed to show this on YouTube, but you're watching it pixelated or blurry or with my face over the top. Zach tells her about the album he's making and signs her on as a backup singer, even though she clearly can't sing.
I'm just showing you my range.
But that doesn't matter to Zach because she's hot. The two go and practice a song in Greg's room, and Christy tells them that there's an opening for them to play at a local club tonight. Zach high-fives Greg and kisses Christy on the head. You can tell by Christy's reaction to this that she doesn't want it to be on camera. We've seen from the past that Christy is only really paying attention to Zach because of his fame, well, potential fame. That's the whole argument he and Amy had at the start of the episode. Speaking of Amy, Zach calls her up and invites her to their first show. We only hear Zach's end of this phone call, but at one point he says, yeah, she's going to be there, who cares? Obviously referring to Christy, who Amy has a strong disliking for. But she inevitably gives in and decides to come. Zach heads downstairs where Sydney and Drew are sitting, who don't like him going out this late and especially after what he pulled earlier. Zach tries to use the reasoning that Amy and Greg don't have all these limitations and restrictions, which really angers Drew, who voices his feelings about how Amy and Greg don't throw their lives away and they think about more people than just themselves. Throughout Drew's speech, Sydney is trying to calm him down and stop him from yelling, but it isn't helping. Drew ends up saying Amy and Greg earned their freedom because their parents are actually proud of them. This is honestly one of my favorite scenes of the show. I know we're only into episode 2, but this is one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. It is very well acted from the three of these characters and really displays Zach's relationship with both his mother and his father. And we also see how they both take different approaches to supporting Zach. Sure, they're both against him for the most part, but Sydney takes a lighter approach, whereas Drew isn't afraid of saying what he really feels. But luckily for Zach, he's really confident that this concert is going to get him famous. Christy is waiting for him at the door of the club and the bouncers let the two of them in. But then he shuts the gate for Amy and Greg, who Zach completely ignores in this scene. Greg and Amy get in and meet up with Zach and Christy. Amy was unaware that Christy was in Zach's band, to which Christy corrects her by saying that Zach is in her band, when really, it's the other way around. But Christy's the type of person to make everything about her in order to be the star. Zach steps outside for some fresh air and Amy comes out to check on him. She draws a makeshift tattoo on Zach's arm to help him fit in better, which in turn will hopefully make him a little less anxious. Now it's time for the band to perform, and with little to no cheers besides Amy, they were ready as ever. They go through 2 songs, both of which make the audience extremely bored and question why they're both so short. Before they can perform a third, someone in the audience starts trash talking Zach and his mum. Zach exits the stage and Christy takes to the center of the stage for herself. She doesn't sing anything, but everyone claps because man see hot woman, man excited. Zach heads home and his family are ready to do the Christmas card photo shoot. He takes off his jacket to reveal he stitched the arms back onto the sweater his mum wanted him to wear, and tells his dad that he will grease up the tracks on the garage door so it isn't as loud when he comes home next time. He even goes as far as to saying he's not doing it just so he can get home later, he's doing it just to help out. Drew also apologizes to Zach for his outburst earlier and says he's not proud of him. He doesn't directly say he's proud of him, but he says he's not proud of him. And the family finally get their nice Christmas card photo. Amy and Zach are sitting on the front doorstep and Zach thanks her for everything she's done for him while he was in his rock and roll phase. Amy asks if this lifestyle is done for good, to which Zach replies, not entirely. He pulls up his sleeve and reveals he's kept the dog tattoo Amy drew on his arm before the show. He goes over why last night's performance wasn't a total disaster, and luckily he has gained some stage experience, and he's even learnt to stand up for himself while people are trash talking him. And that is the end of episode 2. I think this episode really showed how our characters can grow as people in their own, maybe even backwards ways. Zach thought it was just completely okay to disobey his parents just for the camera, much like he learnt to turn off the camera for the funeral in the first episode. Drew learnt that all his son is doing is trying, and even though that's not the life he wants for his son, that doesn't necessarily mean he's not making the right decisions, although it may not seem like that from the outside.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
To start episode 3, we're at the beach. Zach is excited to be filming on location surrounded by extras, and Amy asks what he's gonna miss the most about high school. He replies by listing a bunch of things that don't even apply to him, like not being followed around by the cameras and not having masks made of his face for costumes. This is where Christy cartwheels in. If you couldn't already tell, the two women in Zach's life are the complete opposites. His best friend Amy is more private and quieter, whereas Christy always needs to be the center of attention. Here, it plays on the trope of the stereotypical hot girl, hence the bikini, versus someone who's more reserved, such as wearing clothes that are more covering her body. This can obviously apply to men too. Zach is the only one in this beach shot that is actually wearing a shirt, whereas everybody else is showing off their muscles. This really shows a lot about the characters of Zach and Amy. They're clearly kind of like fish out of water compared to the people they're hanging around. They're a lot more reserved than everybody else. Zach would more than likely claim that these are his people. He even tries to relate to Christy's friends by shouting, "Hey guys, go our team." Christy invites Zach and Amy to come lay with everybody else, and although Zach says yes, Amy doesn't want to. She then invites Zach and the camera crew to a party she's having on Sunday, and even reiterates bringing the camera crew. She doesn't directly invite Amy, who later asks Zach if he should be spending his free time at parties rather than trying to be famous. To which Zach claims that fame is 5% hard work and 95% hanging out with a lot of hot people, and thinks this is the more productive option between the two. Amy tells Zach that she doesn't want to go to the party, which makes Zach cut the cameras and talks to Amy privately. Obviously, the crew don't cut the camera, otherwise we'd have no show. So we do get to see the whole conversation anyway. Zach brings up the fact that they didn't get invited to parties back in high school. Amy isn't fussed by this, as she isn't a big party person, let alone a big Christy Ackerman fan. But Zach feels as if he needs to make up for not being seen in high school, and that this is his chance to finally be popular and show people the new Zach, not the one they ignored back in high school. This sways Amy to saying yes to coming to the party, and now Zach just needs to get Greg on board. Greg is skeptical about this idea at first because he feels like they'll just make him the butt of the joke the whole time. Zach convinces Greg to come by basically using the same reasoning he did on Amy, and then heads home to get his makeover ready for Sunday.
Zach Stone is gonna get a makeover, only minor changes, not for self-esteem issues. Zach Stone will blow up and take over right after a classy, sexy makeover. Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Zach believes that as a celebrity, he constantly needs to change his appearance to please everybody, and uses a cardboard cutout of King Leonidas from 300 as inspiration. He calls Amy to come help him, but she's busy with a hair appointment, which Zach ends up crashing anyway. We don't see, but he chooses the hairstyle he wants, and then it cuts to the dining room table with his family. He reveals to the family what hairstyle he chose, and this is it.
Pops, the haircut wasn't expensive, okay? Moose isn't cheap though.
After some hair discussion, Sydney tells Zach that her and Drew are going out for dinner tomorrow night and he needs to take Andy to baseball practice. Andy doesn't want to be seen with Zach in his new haircut, and Zach doesn't want to ruin his reputation by babysitting Andy. But Drew says it has to happen, whether either of them like it or not. In the next scene, he and Greg are looking for some clothes to wear on Sunday. They spot some people they know from across the store, and Greg says that they used to bully he and Zach, but Zach denies that ever happened and goes over to them anyway. They end up bullying Zach and Greg, and are surprised to find out that they're going to Christy's party. This scene is another strong example of Zach being completely oblivious of how people see him, but he just does what he thinks will make him cooler. Although, after this interaction, Zach is clearly upset by this, which shows us that in his own way, Zach is learning to separate himself from the person he's displaying on camera, which has been a prominent character trait for himself so far in the series. Zach now has his hair and outfit sorted and now needs to take Andy to baseball practice. He gets a phone call from Christy, who says she doesn't know what to wear for the party and suggests Zach and the camera crew come over to help her pick. If Christy's character motives weren't already clear enough, this surely sells it for you, right? Zach rushes to drop Andy off and then speeds over to Christy's house. Zach and the camera crew choose between some very revealing options, and this is where Zach finds out that it's actually a pool party. She tries to flirt with Zach, which makes him really uncomfortable, so he leaves. Back at home, Zach and Greg aren't too fond of the idea of swimming without a shirt on. This is furthering what I was saying at the start of the video about Zach being insecure of his body, hence wearing the shirt at the beach. Zach goes to pick up Amy as they were supposed to be going to the movies, but Zach instead decides they're going to the gym. Zach reveals to Amy that he was late to pick her up because he was at Christie's helping her pick an outfit. Amy catches on to what Zach is doing by saying they need to go to the gym. He wants to impress Christy at the pool party. A buff man walks up to the two of them. This man is none other than Nick, played by Robbie Amell, who plays a big role in the rest of the series. Out of the side characters that I wouldn't count as main characters, Nick is probably the biggest. Nick is familiar with the two of them, so we can only assume they went to the same high school, although it isn't directly said. Amy and Nick seem to share a lot of chemistry here, so we get the feeling they used to be pretty close or something. Their interaction here is very friendly and borderline flirty. Zach pretends he knows what he's doing at the gym, but very clearly doesn't. And while he's talking to the cameras, it zooms in on Nick and Amy in the background, who are laughing together as Nick shows Amy how to work one of the machines. At home, Zach is talking to himself in the mirror, acting out a situation of what he thinks the party is going to be like. As part of the scenario, he takes off his shirt and stares into the mirror, disappointedly. If Zach doesn't see himself as super hot and popular, why would Christy be interested in him? And especially now with Nick in the picture, Zach's mind is filled with self-doubt and envy. This whole episode is focused on changing his appearance to fit what everybody else wants. But if Zach can't even find himself attractive, why should anyone else? This causes Zach to throw away the cardboard cutout. Zach gives up his goals of what is stereotypically considered attractive because he just doesn't feel like that's something he can live up to. Andy comes home angry because Zach forgot to pick him up from baseball practice, and he admits to Zach that he was never going to look like a celebrity cardboard cutout. Zach maybe had 2 or 3 days from when he started getting into this peak physical physique, but Andy tells him that people who look like that train for 8 hours every day for years and years and then still spray their bodies to make their muscles look bigger. Which gives Zach another idea. He heads over to the tanning salon and just expects them to magically make him look like the cutout, although that isn't what Andy meant whatsoever. The next day, the gang turns up to the party, and Zach, with his new hair and his new outfit, looks like an Oompa Loompa. Amy is disappointed in the new Zach and doesn't like that this is what Zach is going to look like from now on. Amy, Greg, and the camera crew head inside while Zach stays out the front. Apparently, he has this big entrance planned. Christy greets Amy and Greg and shows herself off to the camera crew. She offers Greg and Amy a shot, then gives Greg his, and then fakes Amy out and gives the shot to the cameraman. Speak of the devil, in comes Zach with 2 boomboxes playing the same song just slightly out of sync. Zach takes off his shirt and reveals his orange chest with a drawn-on six-pack, and then proceeds to belly flop into the pool. The orange tan mixes with the water and almost makes it a brownish color, which then makes everyone evacuate the pool. Christy looks disappointed that people aren't enjoying her party, and Amy looks disappointed in Zach altogether. He fakes a phone call from Rolling Stone and leaves the party. Everyone just resumes what they were doing and act like nothing really happened. Amy watches Zach as he leaves and seems like she's almost about to get up to go follow him until Nick sits down with her. In an undetermined amount of time later, Zach is laying on his white bed sheets, spilling the orange off of his body all over his bed sheets, when he gets a knock on the door from Amy. She joins Zach on the bed as they watch something together on their iPad. Zach tells Amy that just hanging out like this is what he's going to miss the most about high school. If you remember back at the start of the episode, Amy asked him this question and he didn't give a legitimate answer. Zach suggests that they hang out tomorrow and promises that he won't be late this time. But Amy can't because she has a training session with Nick. Zach agrees to get coffee after the training session but seems disappointed. Throughout the show so far, Zach hasn't been afraid to ditch Amy for hottest girl in the school, Christy Ackerman. But when Amy ditches him for buff personal trainer Nick, he finally understands how Amy has felt this whole time. And on that bittersweet note, that's the end of episode 3. I think the whole message of this episode was self-image. Zach and Amy are naturally reserved and quiet people, but have both been thrown completely out of their comfort zone. And the whole idea of changing your appearance to make people happy goes against the whole notion we've taught ourselves about loving ourselves for who we are on the inside and the impact we leave on people.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
To start off episode 4, we see Zach juggling fruit at work. He gives us this sad little fact that while everyone else was at senior prom, he was teaching himself to juggle. This is also the first time we can clearly see what Zach's work is actually called. DeSantos. There's a fun little fact for you. Christy shows up at Zach's work and invites him, and of course the camera crew, on a date Friday night. Pat is proud of Zach for scoring a date with a hot girl. Zach goes and tells Greg the news about his date, which Greg supports his friend, and says they might end up hooking up. Zach seems to think that by this, Greg meant sometime in the future, once they get to know each other a lot better, but is shocked when Greg reiterates that he actually meant on Friday, because he's heard rumors that Christy is the type of person to sleep with people on the first date. Zach tells the cameras that he's had sex before, but really doesn't seem too confident in what he's saying.
Because I have had sex before and I love it.
Back at home, Zach is watching a movie when Sydney walks in, but he can't hear her because of his headphones. The crew tells Sydney that he's been watching porn for the last 3 hours. Andy comes in and questions why Zach is watching porn on his iPad instead of his own laptop, to which Zach rebuttals that he doesn't want to get himself a virus, which is completely fair. Be a good brother, Andy. God. Zach seems to think he needs to prepare himself for his date with Christy since it's been a while since he's been with a woman. But Andy doesn't think he's ever been with a woman. Back at Zach's job, while serving a customer, Zach thinks that this is just exactly what America wants to see, a power couple. Just as he's saying this, he gets a text from Christy, who basically tells him that her parents are out of town on Friday and they should go back to hers after dinner. She also tells him to bring batteries so they can record everything.
And she capitalized the word everything. She wants to film everything?
Can I please just pay for my cutlets?
Am I gonna make a sex tape?
Zach Stone is gonna make a sex tape. Zach Stone is gonna make a sex tape. Zach will have sex on the bed and on the floor, and it will be great because he's definitely had sex before. Zach Stone. Zach Stone.
Zach's over at Greg's house now and they have company. Zach has made a doll of sorts to practice on. And that's what he does for the next 5 minutes of the show. I timed it. It's 5 minutes. After watching that whole ordeal, Greg tries to correct Zach by saying what he's doing isn't how you go about it, if you know what I'm saying. And Greg knows this because he's done it before, which surprises Zach because Greg's never told him about it, even though he says he did it last summer. They get into an argument now because Greg has been keeping this from Zach since last summer. Later on, Zach is showing Andy some photos of Christy, all of which are very revealing. Sydney and Drew walk in and Zach doesn't hesitate to show them too. Drew has one of my favorite lines in the whole show here, when Zach shows him the photo of Christy.
Hey, nice work, Andy.
This is actually Zach's date.
Don't be mean, Andy.
No, really.
Really?
Zach tells his family the plan to have sex with Christy and then put it on the internet. I can't understand why Zach would reveal all of this to his family, but I guess that's something dumb we should expect from Zach by now. In the next scene, Amy and Zach are hanging out and run into Nick. He doesn't stay for long, he just basically flirts with Amy then leaves like a Chad. Zach expresses his unreasonable dislike towards Nick and then leaves to get ready for his date. He hypes himself up in his bedroom and then heads downstairs. But downstairs are Drew and Sydney, who want to have a little chat with Zach. They start to talk to him about the birds and the bees, but once Sydney says, "Your father and I," Zach has had enough. All they manage to tell him is that since it's his first time, it needs to be special. So he needs to make sure he knows what he's doing, and maybe putting it on the internet isn't the best idea. Last minute before Zach leaves, his dad tells him not to do it, and then gives him money for protection if he does end up going through with it. Zach is talking to the cameras outside just as Greg pulls up, telling Zach not to do it. That's now 3 people who have told him not to go through with it. Zach is still angry at Greg for not telling him he wasn't a virgin. It doesn't help that everybody sees Christy as this really hot person, so Zach just assumes that Greg is envious of him for having sex with the hottest girl in the school. I keep saying in the school, but they don't go there anymore. So if I say that, just forget that, okay? Greg says his problem isn't with Zach having sex, it's Zach having sex and filming it and putting it on the internet. He believes that it's going to be embarrassing for Zach. Greg has done all he can to look out for his friend, but Zach doesn't care. This is a reoccurring character dynamic between the two throughout the whole show. Greg will tell Zach the logical, reasonable excuse for not doing something, and Zach will still do it. Zach and Christy then head out for dinner and then go back to hers afterwards. It's about to get a bit inappropriate here. Once they get to the front door, Christy says they shouldn't be going through with this. She starts to bring up her drug-dealing ex-boyfriend who could be watching them as they speak. This freaks Zach out until Christy reveals that she was only doing it to make things a bit steamier by having an interesting backstory. They start to kiss and both of them repeatedly look at the camera while doing so. It's interesting to think about how both of these characters are doing the same thing, but with different intent. Zach wants to make sure the cameras are filming him doing this awesome, cool thing, whereas Christy wants to be doing it just for the sake of doing it on camera. As they head inside, Christy takes one of the cameraman's hands and drags him in instead of Zach. 2 out of the 3 of the film crew actually enter Christy's bedroom before Zach does. But when he does enter the room, Christy tells the cameraman to leave, but leave their cameras positioned towards the bed. Zach is very clearly anxious about this, whereas Christy is more eager. After a while of doing what they were doing, Zach tells Christy that they need to stop. Zach says it doesn't feel right since it's their first date, and Christy asks why that even matters. And this all just solidifies what Greg told Zach back at his work. Zach comes out and tells Christy that he thinks it's too early in the relationship for them to be making a sex tape. But Christy is shocked by this because her intentions weren't to make a sex tape, let alone even have sex. In reality, she just wanted to make out a little bit for the cameras. Zach, now embarrassed, offers to hang out again tomorrow to forget all about this, and since the camera crew have the day off, it'll just be the 2 of them. They can get to know each other a bit better and, just do what a normal couple would do without the cameras. Christy then delivers one of the most heartbreaking, in my opinion, lines of the whole show.
Wait, well, why would we hang out if the cameras weren't there?
Because we're a thing. What are you talking about?
Zach, we're not a thing. We're doing the show, right?
Yeah, no, I know that, but I just thought we could hang out with other cameras around. Does that sound like such a horrible idea to you? Are you serious? You refuse to hang out with me without my cameras?
Yeah.
Really?
Really?
Zach fires Christy from the show because her true intentions were becoming clearer and clearer. While it was obvious to us this whole time, Zach was completely oblivious to all of it. He thought something could genuinely happen between the 2 of them, but Christy wouldn't allow that. And despite Greg and Amy's worries, and Andy's disbelief that someone as hot as her would go out with Zach, he didn't see it, which really says a lot about the type of person Zach is. He sees good in bad people. Sure is a great character trait to have, but in the end, as we can see, will ultimately end up hurting you. And this is the last we see of Christy on Zach Stone Is Gonna Be Famous. Although she only appeared in the first 4 episodes, she had a huge role in getting the character of Zach started. Zach visits Greg and apologizes. Greg was right all along, and Zach was just jealous. Greg also apologizes to Zach for not telling him his secret, and he didn't tell him because his first time was embarrassing, and he just didn't want that for Zach. And now the 2 of them are back on good terms. Then Zach shows up to Amy's house with a copy of Mighty Ducks, a movie he promised they'd watch together when he wasn't too busy with Christy. But now that Christy is out of the show and Zach's life, he decides to show up to Amy's house and make things right. But he stops in the driveway when he sees Amy and Nick kissing at the doorstep. And that's where Zach Stone ends up at the end of episode 4. I think the whole message of this episode was identity. Zach was in a mindset that made him believe he should be ashamed to be a virgin, hence why hiding it all episode. Greg was the opposite of this. He was embarrassed of the first time he had sex, so he didn't want to tell even his best friend. And Christy finally showed her true identity to Zach by telling Zach that there was no relationship between the 2 of them off camera. Everything we had seen as the viewers of the show all unfortunately came into Zach's light.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Episode 5 begins with Zach explaining how similar he and non-celebrities are. Sydney comes downstairs and is shocked because Zach got off the wait list at Emerson College, his dream school. Drew then enters the room and Sydney shares her excitement with him. While everybody is excited to see Zach going to college, he is visibly uncomfortable during this scene. He tells the family that despite getting through this far, he still has no plans of going. He thinks his dreams are too big and aiming for college is just going to set him back. The letter states that Zach has 2 days to give them a final answer. And the family tells Zach that he should really consider it. This opportunity is once in a lifetime for Zach, but it's not what he wants. Sydney tells the family that Drew never went to college, and it was one of the biggest mistakes of his life. Sydney knows that it's what's best for Zach, whether he knows it or not. Andy, on the other hand, just wants Zach to be gone so he can get his room, which is just slightly bigger than his. Zach reluctantly agrees to think about it at the minimum, but then shakes his head to the camera. In the next scene, Zach and Greg are hanging out, and he's explaining the reasons why he's not going to college. And his reasoning is Animal House, and Revenge of the Nerds, and Legally Blonde. The two are waiting for Amy to get there, and Zach seems to think she's late because she's hanging out with Nick. He expresses how much he hates Nick to Greg, and then tells him he wants to curb stomp Nick. Bit harsh. Then, when Amy shows up, Zach is surprised because she actually has brought Nick. The four of them head in to see a movie, and Zach tells the camera crew to wait outside. We haven't seen much of the camera crew so far, but they do become more predominant characters as the show moves on. And this episode is kind of the start of that. So on Zach's camera team, there are 2 cameramen and a sound guy. Jason Rogel plays Marcus, Justin Dre plays Philip, and Asad Aslam plays Hassad. I'll get into the whole who's later on because it doesn't really matter at the moment, but later on it will. After the movie, Nick invites Zach and Greg to a party at his college tonight. Zach doesn't really want to go because he thinks he's too good for it, but Greg says yes. Greg so far seems to like Nick, whereas Zach is the complete opposite. The way I like to look at it is that Greg seems to think Nick is the very first popular person who pays attention to him and remotely enjoys being around him. Because so far, Nick has actually been really nice to both Greg and Zach, but Zach doesn't choose to see the nice qualities, just the bad ones. Zach changes his answer to yes when Nick says Amy's coming to the party, but on the car ride home, he expresses to Greg how he thinks it'll be a waste of their time. Filming people quote-unquote getting wild isn't going to make good content. But as Zach usually does after saying something like this, he realizes that maybe it is good content. Zach goes home and decides the next big thing he's going to be famous for. Zach runs downstairs to tell his mum and his dad that he's going to college, but not the way they think.
Mom, Dad, I'm going to college.
You are?
For the night.
To see if you like it?
No, silly. To film guys.
Zach Stone is gonna get wild. 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 Take off your shirt if you're a guy.
After the title sequence, Zach is explaining to Greg how filming shirtless guys is a really good opportunity for him. In Nick and Amy's car, Nick is worried about whether or not Zach will keep it in check or embarrass him and himself. Amy says that she'll talk to Zach about it, but by now we know what Zach is like. Since this is the school Greg will be going to in a few months, he thinks it'll be better for them to just have a good time and not worry about Zach's show, so he asks him to leave the cameras behind. Nick and Greg both know what Zach is like, and there's probably no persuading him, so it's understandable why they're worried about this. And I'm sure deep down Amy feels this way too, but with Nick's reputation and Greg's future on the line, they're both on edge. The group head into the party, and seconds after walking in the door, Zach embarrasses them. Not only are there 2 cameras and a boom mic, but the house now has someone yelling about doing a keg stand and, well, just referencing the most stereotypical college experience he could think of. Zach and Greg go over to talk to some girls, and they're both pretty awkward around them. The girls ask if they came with Nick and think he's pretty cool, and Zach, being Zach, disagrees with them. Zach continues the conversation by asking the girls if they have boyfriends, and when they both say they don't, this makes Zach angry. Zach is disappointed because he was looking for guys to film, and if they don't have boyfriends, they don't have guys near them for Zach to film. Amy talks to Zach about what Nick was saying in the car, and this upsets him. He was fine with Greg asking him to take it easy, but he really wanted Amy to support him. And on top of this, he hasn't even been able to talk to Amy about getting into college because she's been so busy with Nick. He's scared that he's making the biggest decision of his life without the input of his best friend. Zach leaves the party, and Nick and Amy and Greg stay. While leaving the party, Zach gets stopped by 2 people on the front porch. They ask him about the cameras and then ask if he's leaving. Obviously that was his original plan, but in the next scene he's sitting and talking with them on the steps. They have some good conversation about filmmaking and cameras and if he's taking any classes there. He says no, and when they ask where he is studying, he's about to say he's not going to college, but then he cuts himself off and instead says he got off the waitlist at Emerson. They invite him to a party tomorrow night, to which he accepts, just as Nick, Greg and Amy all walk out. Zach now has friends outside of Greg and Amy. Some friends he relates to and may actually benefit being friends with. And this could honestly be the deciding factor for Zach about choosing college or not. The next morning, Zach is telling the camera about how he didn't completely hate the college experience. Sydney overhears this and explains to Zach that he should go to college because it's just the safer option. She says she wants what's best for Zach, and when she leaves, Zach whispers to himself, Me too. Which, based on what we've seen in this episode so far, both at the party and the way he was talking about college, that could mean either thing. Zach catches Andy trying to move his stuff into Zach's room, since Sydney and Drew said Andy could have his room if or when he goes to college. Then Zach finds out that the film crew have been printing resumes out, assuming that they'll be out of a job soon. Here is where we also get a good look at the film crew. Well, two of them at least. Camera guy 1 is Hassad, played by Arshad Aslam. The sound guy is Philip, played by Justin Dre, which means the second, currently off-camera cameraman, is Marcus, played by Justin Rogel. Zach heads out to the party and Amy suggests he leaves the cameras in the car so they can focus on having a good time and getting the full college experience. He does so and meets up with the people he met last night and even introduces himself to a completely new person. Oh, there's Marcus. The camera crew is sitting in the car talking about how unfair it is that they miss out on all the fun. Marcus suggests that they go in and check on Zach, but Hassad said they should just leave him alone. Philip really wants to go check on him, so they do so. Well, from the window. They can see a heap of people dancing and having fun, and even Greg is talking to the women he met last night. And Amy and Nick are making out, but they can't find Zach until they move over a few windows to see this. Zach really did want to focus on having a good college experience, but doesn't fit in anywhere. His two best friends are off having a good time with other people, but why is it so hard for him to do that? He sort of did yesterday with the film people, but at a party this size, it's not hard to lose people. After seeing Zach alone, the crew head back to the car. Then, once in the car, Zach gets in and doesn't want to be filmed while talking about how the party was. He tells the crew how much it really sucked and how he felt like it was just high school all over again. He then takes it from the top and tells the camera how he's not going to college and he's just going to follow his dreams because that's what he wants. As he's saying this, a group of frat boys jump on the hood of his car. One of them takes one of the cameras from an open window. They start filming themselves and throwing around the camera as Zach and the crew try to calm them down. But obviously they aren't listening because they are drunk college kids, and they start mocking Zach and humping the camera. This is where Nick comes out and stands up for Zach and tells them to give the camera back. They do so, and Nick, Zach, Amy, and Greg all leave. Zach thanks Nick for getting his camera back, and while his apology seems very badly worded, you can tell he really meant it, because Zach has never had a popular person stand up for him before. So although he hates Nick, Zach really appreciates what he just did for him. Zach gets home from the party and Drew is sitting in the garage waiting for him. He brings up Emerson to Zach and asks him what decision he ended up making. Zach tells him truthfully that he really doesn't want to go. This is where Zach expects Drew to tell him that he's making a huge dumb mistake, but his dad tells him that not going to college wasn't a huge mistake for him at all, despite what Sydney has been saying. He relates to Zach by telling him that from experience, he knows how Zach feels. When everyone around him is doing something, it's hard for you to do something different. And at the end of the day, Drew just thinks Zach should do what's best for Zach and not conform to the idea of a future everyone else is setting up for him. He ends this by telling Zach that he does one day think he'll be famous. Zach then says, "No, you don't." And Drew says, "No, I don't." So it was nice for a second, I guess. Everything else was genuine, just not that part. And that's the end of episode 5. I gotta say, this one might be my favorite of the show so far. There are some episodes later on that may or may not be better than this one. I don't want to give too much away. But at this stage, this one takes it. It's not the funniest episode in the series, but it definitely has the most character development. Greg and his future in college, Zach and his future in college, and being nice to Nick. And Drew accepting that his son is the only one that can shape his own future. And although he pressures him into doing what he wants him to do, in the end, it's up to Zach. Before we move on to episode 6, I do want to point out that this is where the downfall of the show started. In 2013, MTV aired episodes 1 through 5 at 10:30 p.m. But from episode 6 onwards, it was moved to 11 p.m. to justify the dwindling audience attention. Half an hour may not seem like much, but a time slot is often the make or break for a show. Having episodes 1 through 5 air at 10:30 p.m. on MTV was kind of prime time for this type of content. But the later and later a show starts to air, the less people are more likely to watch it, even if that's just an extra half an hour. I must specify, trust me, just because the viewership dropped from here on out, the quality was only uphill from here.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
We start episode 6 at DeSanto's, where Zach gets a surprise visit from Amy. Zach asks Amy if she wants to hang out tonight, but she says she can't because Nick is cooking her dinner. Zach lies to Amy and says that he's been getting into cooking recently too, mainly just to try to one-up Nick. He suggests that Amy and Nick should come over tonight and they can have a big feast with Nick's food and his food. Amy is unsure about this until Zach does the typical guilting her into doing it. He does this by bringing up the fact that she's flaked on him a few times to hang out with Nick and he feels like they don't hang out anymore. So, bit of a harsh move from Zach. When Amy has a change of heart, Zach literally runs out the front of the store, leaving a customer.
Zach Stone is is gonna be a famous chef. Zach Stone is gonna be a famous chef. He doesn't know a thing about gourmet cooking, but his mom can do it, so it can't be that hard. Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Zach is now prepping for tonight because this is his chance to become a celebrity chef. Zach has the idea that being a celebrity chef isn't about being a good cook, it's about being a good character, which obviously isn't true. While Zach is making whatever this is, Sydney and Drew are arguing about the book club they're in together. Sydney seems to love the book club, but Drew doesn't like the books or any of the people. Zach makes what is apparently French toast and is disgusted, but tries to play it off as if it's edible. Clearly, Zach isn't a good chef, so let's see what wacky scenarios Zach Stone will get into this episode. He goes upstairs and invites Andy and his girlfriend to his dinner party. So far, the guest list includes Amy, Nick, Greg, Andy, and Andy's girlfriend. Zach goes to the grocery store to buy more food for tonight and is interrupted by Pat. He reveals to Zach that he no longer gets staff discount, but Zach bribes him by inviting him to the dinner party. Zach gets home and starts cooking and is very frustrated as he hasn't got a single clue what to do in the kitchen. He also has this really funny line about cinnamon. I don't know if it's funny, but I find it funny.
Ground cinnamon as opposed to sky cinnamon. All right, this needs to be good.
He feels the need to prepare literally anything better than whatever Nick has planned. And I have a feeling it's to impress a certain somebody. Then there's this really funny scene with Zach and avocados.
Welcome to Zach's kitchen, mate. We are cooking a little bit of... There's a rock in this. Are you joking? The whole batch is bad.
He tries to preheat a microwave and then uses an electric whisk on a bowl of flour. Zach has made an absolute mess of the kitchen and more or less gives up. He knows he's not going to be able to outcook Nick and that Amy would love Nick forever. Zach recruits Sydney to help him finish the meals. Well, more or less start the meals, because I don't know if you can count whatever Zach was doing. What was he making with flour and avocados? Sydney gets started on the harder stuff while she asks Zach to simply wash the green beans. He does literally wash the green beans. Zach invites Andy into the kitchen only to then pull a Gordon Ramsay on him.
Get out of my kitchen, mate! Get the out, you little You don't know what I've been through.
Zach, language.
Born and raised in London, sweeping chimneys, cooking on cobblestone, mate. You don't know me. Get out of my kitchen.
This is also the first and only time anyone breaks in this whole show. If you slow it down, you can actually see Cameron Pilatus start laughing as he turns away from Zach after he kisses him on the head. The meals are all done and Zach, being Zach, takes all the credit for it. He then kicks Sydney out and thanks her for her help. Amy and Nick arrive and they join Greg, Andy, and Andy's girlfriend at the table. They dig in and everyone, even Nick, loves Zach's food. This whole scene so far has been framed so we only see Greg, Nick, Amy, Zach, Andy, and his girlfriend until out of completely nowhere comes Pat, who honestly I forgot was even invited. Pat creepily offers Andy's girlfriend Denise some rice.
You got to try some of this rice.
Who are you?
Denise only appears in this one episode and is played by Salome Avery, who would go on to be in Teen Wolf and Always Sunny. Pat brings up that Zach is the best employee DeSantos has ever had. And the guy before Zach was...
just a nightmare, you know. He was normal size, good looking, very much like you, very Nick type, like a hot guy, you know.
And he had to let him go because too many girls were coming to the store and interrupting him working, which has never been a problem since Zach started working there. I know he was only trying to compliment Zach, but kind of backfired, but the thought was there. He then asked Denise what her shoe size is. So I'm done defending him.
Denise, I'm curious, what is your shoe size?
Keep in mind she's the same age as Andy, who is somewhere between 13 and 16. I can't really work it out. Zach thinks it'll be fun for everyone to pick what dish was their favorite, in hopes everyone will vote for his and not Nick's. Zach gets angry with Amy for saying her vote is a tie, and Nick intervenes for voting for one of Zach's dishes. Nick seems to actually care for Zach, and we saw it in the last episode at the party, but Zach just doesn't like seeing him with Amy, so he can't see that he's actually a good guy. The dinner party is a complete mess. Zach is angry at Amy, who won't vote for a dish. Andy keeps almost outing Zach by saying their mum cooked all the food. Greg can't get a word out without somebody cutting him off, and Pat won't stop hitting on somebody more than half his age.
Couple of knuckleheads over here, eh, Denise? What is your shoe size?
Even when leaving, Pat specifically says goodbye to Denise and nobody else.
Bye, Denise! It was great getting to meet you!
Everyone's going their separate ways, but before leaving, Nick praises Zach's cooking and asks if he would like to cater for a get-together his parents are throwing tomorrow night. Zach lies here and says he's actually busy catering for a wedding, so he can't make it, sadly. The next day, Zach and Amy are hanging out, and Amy's talking about how it's a shame that Zach can't be cooking at Nick's. Zach is shocked when Amy says this because he didn't know Amy was going to be there. So of course, that changes his mind and he cancels his plans that weren't real in the first place. In the kitchen, Sydney is cleaning up after Zach and Drew isn't happy about that. He says the more she gives into whatever nonsense Zach does that week, the more he's just going to keep doing it. Zach comes in and tells Sydney about the plan and how desperately he needs her help. After what Drew had just said to her, she tells Zach she's not going to help him anymore, since she's doing all the work, but he's taking all the credit. In the next scene, Sydney and Drew are at their book club as they spot a camera come in from one of the camera guys we know and love from Zack Stone Is Gonna Be Famous, everybody. Where there's cameras, there's Zack Stone. Seeing the camera catches them off guard as Zach walks in a chef outfit. So Nick's family are hosting the book club meeting that Zach is catering for. What could go wrong? So he gets the cooking started. Now, keep in mind that everything that made Nick and Amy think he was a good chef wasn't even made by him. It was made by his mum. He's doing everything just completely the opposite as to how it should be done, but ends up making his first dish.
Who wants a lettuce cup?
Everyone is doubting Zach's ability as he seems to be getting just worse and worse at cooking. He's not only making a fool of himself, but also his parents and Nick. He catches a glimpse of Amy and Nick talking quietly. Both seem anxious and disappointed. Sydney sees Zach looking at the two of them and catches on to what's happening. Zach wants to impress Amy, so she jumps up and asks Zach for his signature dish, a lettuce cup. A woman who I can only assume to be Nick's mum starts bad-mouthing Zach, so Sydney defends him by saying she shouldn't diss him until she's actually tried his dish. This gets Drew involved and the two of them and Zach leave. But while doing so, Zach accidentally knocks over the whole table. Upset, Zach is moping on his bed as Sydney walks in to talk to him. She tells Zach that he gave it his all, and cooking is just a matter of trial and error. Zach stares ahead as his mother walks out the room. He lets out a sigh because his issue isn't that he can't cook, it's that he can't have what he wants. He can't have who he wants. No matter what he attempts to do and how hard he attempts to do it, he can't be better than Nick, meaning he can't be with Amy. And that's where we leave Zack Stone at the end of episode 6. We are now halfway done with the series. Our characters are all in completely different places they were in episode 1, and they still have a lot more development to go through, believe me. But let's not get ahead of ourselves because now we're on to episode 7, and boy is it's a crazy one.
What is your shoe size?
Zack Stone, Zack Stone.
We're starting episode 7 at a mini golf course with Zach, Greg, and Amy, and surprisingly, Nick isn't with them. So it seems like it's just some bonding time between Zach and his two best friends. Back at home, Zach walks in on his parents kissing and are horrified. Sydney says it's their 25-year anniversary and tells Zach and Amy their plan for tonight. Amy gets a text from Nick asking to hang out and tells Zach that she has to leave. But Zach plays it off as if he needed her to leave anyway because he has to get ready for a date tonight. Obviously, he doesn't have a date tonight. Amy suggests that they go on a double date and they aim to go mini golfing on Saturday. Sydney offers to set Zach up with her dentist's daughter because as we saw at the dinner party in the last episode, she's caught on to Zach trying to impress Amy. So Zach lying about having a girlfriend would probably make things worse. Zach doesn't think he needs his mum to set him up and he can go out and find girls by himself. At work, Zach asks a completely random shopper if she wants to go play mini golf with him and she just walks away in disgust. Pat tries to relate to Zach by saying when he's famous, girls will just be competing for him. And that's what gives Zach this week's idea. With Greg as our host, the Zatchula has begun.
Zack Stone is gonna be the Zatchuler. Zack Stone is gonna be the Zatchuler. If you're jealous, then you're a hater, 'cause Zack Stone is a master dater. Zack Stone, Zack Stone.
Zach and Greg are waiting outside Zach's house for our group of contestants. They start showing up one by one, but there are far more than Zach was expecting. The ladies are all introduced to their Zatchula and the rest of the competition, and more than half of them leave, leaving 4 eligible Zatchula honeys, as Zach calls them, that could still win Zach's heart. We are introduced to the 4 contestants. First up, we have Roseanne, played by Sarah Foran, a tired single mother. Jackie, played by Anne-Marie Canoia, a newly single woman looking to get over her ex. Deb, played by Molly Burnett, the inventor of Deb's Magic Mop Gloves. And Carrie, played by Alison Hayslip, someone who just loves competition and is ready to win anything. Zach is very excited to get to know the contestants. Just as Amy shows up, he tries to cover up what's happening and still agrees to go play mini golf with her and Nick and Zach's imaginary girlfriend. The first round for the contestants is question and answer, where they're given a question about Zach that they have to answer in a way that will impress him. They only do one question, that being what their ideal date with Zach would look like. Carrie says they'll go watch her roller derby team. Roseanne sleeps through the question because she's a new mum and she's tired. Jackie would take him to P.F. Chang's because that was her ex's favourite restaurant. And Deb would take him to somewhere with dirty floors so they can use Deb's magic mop gloves to clean them. Deb's only trait throughout the episode is plugging her gloves, so you may hear Deb's magic mop gloves a few times throughout this episode. Next up is the rose ceremony. It's time for Zach to send one of the contestants home. And sadly, our first unlucky Zatchula honey is Jackie. The reasoning behind this is because Zach thinks she has unresolved feelings for her ex, which is pretty obvious. But before she leaves, Greg tries to flirt with her by saying he can help make her ex jealous. And then they start making out. The next round takes place at Zach's work. Jackie has stuck around and though while not part of the show, is sticking with Greg. The next challenge is for the ladies to grab the items they'd use to make a nice meal with Zach. The second Pat appears out of nowhere, Zach decides to cut the cameras.
Greg, what is going on over here?
Oh my
you guys
God.
having fun?
Once everyone's back with their items, they reveal to Zach what they chose. Carrie chose beer and cigarettes, which the store doesn't even sell. Deb chose ingredients to make an ice cream sundae, which of course is a way to promote her gloves. And finally, Roseanne has chosen baby food and diapers, which was just for her baby. Fair play. Zach disqualifies Roseanne for this, leaving the final two girls. Greg also leaves the show here with Jackie, making Zach the new announcer and Zatchula. It's time for the final round of the Zatchula. Back at home, the challenge is to make small talk with Sydney and Drew, and Zach will rate their banter with his parents. Carrie starts hitting on Drew, which makes Sydney angry and accidentally spill a cup of water, which then of course Deb rushes to clean up with her magic mop glove thingies. After everything goes wrong, Zach disqualifies Carrie for hitting on his dad and eliminates Deb for being there solely to promote her gloves. Zach burns their roses in a candle, which makes Sydney and Drew very angry at him, so they send everybody out and Zach to his room. The next morning, Zach gets a text from Amy. It's a reminder about today's mini golf double date. Sydney comes in and Zach asks for the number of the dentist's daughter. Sydney reluctantly gives him the number and is still disappointed in him about ruining their anniversary dinner. The four of them go to mini golf, and off the bat, Zach's date Laura seems really nice. Amy isn't having it though, as she interrupts them whenever they talk and glances at the camera whenever they get too close to each other. Zach and Amy get into a little disagreement about her cheating at mini golf. I mean, she did technically cheat. Look at this push. She's claiming that's just one hit, but she's pushing it. Zach let it slide at the start of the episode, but this time not so much because Laura's there and he's just kind of fed up with Amy as a whole. Zach has an outburst and is clearly very frustrated. On the way home, Zach asks Laura if she wants to hang out again, but she politely declines. And the reason for this is because she doesn't want to date someone who's in love with somebody else. Zach pretends to not know what she's talking about, but he knows deep down what she means. Zach set up a nice meal for Sydney and Drew as a way to make up for last night. They invite Zach to join in on the meal, and that's the end of episode 7 and the end of the Zatchula. Now, throughout this whole episode, it became clearer that Zach wanted one thing, Amy. No number of dates and no number of girls can fill that Amy-sized hole in his heart. And whenever he looks at his parents, he thinks he's missed out because Sydney and Drew got together at a very young age and stayed together. He looks at them and compares it to Nick and Amy. This scares Zach because he feels like he's looking at Amy and Nick's future, not Amy and his. It's also worth noting that at this point of the show, MTV just kind of wanted out with Zach Stone. They aired episode 8 and 9 back to back on June 20th and pushed out episodes 10, 11 and 12 within a span of 3 days from June 27th to June 29th.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Episode 8 once again opens at Zach's place of work. He gets a visit from Amy while he's comparing himself to different items on the shelves. It's Amy's birthday this weekend and she wants to make sure that Zach is going to show up. Over the years, Zach has planned all of Amy's parties, the themes, the cake, everything about it. But this year, Zach says he's not going. And he uses his work as an excuse when we really know that he's not going because he doesn't want to be around Amy given how he feels about her. He says he's sure Nick will sort out the party and then walks away. He comes home later that night and finds his parents sitting in the dark. This scares Zach, but they reveal that they were waiting up for Andy because he snuck out of the house. Zach loves this idea because he gets to see Andy told off, and he treats this like a big surprise birthday party when he actually gets here. They tell Andy off and Drew grounds him for a week. This upsets, surprisingly, Zach and Andy. Andy because he's grounded for a week, and Zach because Andy's only grounded for a week. Sydney and Drew are both worried about their son, and Sydney says that if things really got bad, the next time they would have seen him would have been on the news. This makes Zach look at the camera as the idea comes to his mind.
Zach Stone is gonna go missing and everyone will be like, oh no, where did Zach go? We should have cherished him while he was around us. Now he's gone. Remember how cool he was. Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
That's right, Zach's plan for this week is to go missing. Now he's over at Greg's and he's telling him about the plan, and he reveals that Greg will be the only one to actually know about it. Zach tells Greg that the best way to get attention is to go missing, saying America won't know what they had until it's gone. Greg then brings up Amy's birthday and asks if he'll be back in time, to which Zach says no, because he'll be MIA. He stops by the house to say his final goodbyes to his family. He hints to everyone that they may never see him again, but they just think he's off running an errand. He leaves Hassad at the house to film the family while he's gone, and their reaction to him being missing. Zach Stone is now officially off the grid.
Hey, it's an unmarked white van. I'm gonna go get a ride with that guy. Hey, wait up. The driver's got a mustache.
Okay.
He sends Amy a text suggesting they meet up at their favorite coffee shop, but just doesn't show up. He assumes she'd be worried and devastated, but when he looks through the bushes, she's on the phone laughing, presumably to Nick. Zach falls asleep in the bushes and wakes up to see Amy has been joined by Nick. Next, Zach stops by Greg's work, asking if his parents have contacted him about Zach being missing. Zach wants someone he cares about to make a police report about Zach being missing, and to do so, he gets the idea of making a ransom video to send to his family. Back at home, Andy is trying to sneak out again as a note is passed under the door. He picks it up and it's a USB, and on it is Zach's ransom video. Clearly, it's just filmed in Greg's bedroom with Greg pretending to be the person holding him hostage. He says that if his parents ever want to see him again, they need to alert the major news outlets and spam Al Roger's Twitter with hashtag #SaveZach. On top of this, he says they need to send Andy to boarding school somewhere very far away. Sydney comes up to Andy's room and asks if he's heard anything from Zach, and he tells her that he's staying with Greg. So he's clearly caught onto this, which, I mean, who wouldn't? At the grocery store, Zach, in disguise, is plastering missing photos on milk cartons to make people more aware of the fact that he's missing. Nick walks up to Zach and immediately recognizes him, despite his foolproof disguise. Nick tells Zach that he's throwing a party for Amy's birthday this weekend, and Zach doesn't like the fact that Nick's throwing it instead of him. But Nick, being the good person he seems to be, doesn't think he'll live up to the legendary Zach Stone parties Amy always talks about. Nick invites him to the party and Zach goes back to incognito mode. Zach is sleeping over at Greg's and they look at the invite for Amy's party. Nick seems to be doing everything Zach knows Amy doesn't like, obviously not on purpose, but this shows that Zach knows Amy better than Nick does, and really he should be the one throwing the party if he wasn't in love with her. Zach then leaves Greg's house with all of his belongings, saying that staying at Greg's is far too obvious and he needs to stay at the last place people would look for him, Nick's house. While he's there, Zach offers to help set up for Amy's party, and Nick is really happy with what he's done. He's doing better than Nick ever would have. Nick tells him that Amy always thought of Zach as the brother she never had, and while that's such a sweet thing for Amy to say, that's not what he wants to hear from her. He doesn't want to be a brother, he wants to be something more, and he can't be both because that's illegal and weird. After spending the night at Nick's, Zach stops by his house to see his devastated family mourning the loss of their son. He sneaks in, and to his surprise, nobody's really looking for him. They're all playing Monopoly with Hassad. This really angers him. Nobody really cared that he was gone. Andy snuck out of the house for 2 hours and they went ballistic, whereas Zach disappears for over a day and they don't care. Zach and Greg drive over to Amy's, who is now the only person who thinks Zach is missing. They go inside and nothing. She's too distracted with the party she thinks Nick threw. Zach tries to get over to Amy, but people keep getting in his way. One of them asks what the cameras are for and questions if there's someone famous around, and Zach says, no, there isn't. Which is the first time in the whole show Zach has denied the chance to call himself a celebrity. Amy spots the cameras from across the room and with a big smile starts looking for Zach, but he's nowhere to be found. After a while of not knowing where Zach is, Amy thinks she might know where he could be. She goes outside and explains to the camera that when they were younger, there was this spot Zach would always go to whenever he was upset. And to Amy's surprise, he's not there. He's just sitting on the path outside of the house. She goes and sits with him and tells him that the party is amazing. And even though he tries to say Nick set it all up, Amy knows that it was Zach. They both agree that they need to get better at hanging out before Amy goes to college, because so far, something's always gotten in their way. Most of the time being Christy or Nick. Zach suggests they head back into the party, but Amy just wants to sit there for a little bit longer. She wants to catch up with Zach and tells him that she missed him, and he says the same back. And that's where we leave Zach Stone at the end of episode 8, sitting out the front of his best friend's house with his dream girl as more of a brother figure than what he really wants to be. The whole root of this episode seems to be Amy. Yes, of course it was her birthday and that was a whole plot point, but Zach's whole arc was really all about Amy. He wanted to go missing expecting people to miss him, and yeah, he was upset when his family didn't care, but he really only wanted Amy to be sad that he was gone. And he got that in the end. And out of it, he got his best friend back. Zach Stone may not be famous just yet, but at least he has Amy. Just not in the way he wants her.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Episode 9 starts off with Zach and Amy laying on a bed, asking each other would you rather questions. From off camera, we hear a voice that asks them if they're buying anything, and it's revealed that they're laying on a bed at a mattress store. The worker says to Amy that she can't be lying on one of the beds, flirting with her boyfriend. Amy awkwardly laughs it off and says that Zach isn't her boyfriend. The worker then goes on to tell Amy that she shouldn't be lying in bed with someone who isn't her boyfriend because that will lead them on. And then she says that Zach is probably in love with Amy because of this. Zach replies to this by saying that would be horrible, followed by some uncomfortable silence. Amy gets a text from Nick and sighs at it. She tells Zach that Nick is being annoying, but it's nothing to worry about. This is when Greg appears with a trolley packed full of stuff. While loading items into the car, Greg and Amy are talking about college, and Greg tells Amy that he's already spoken to the person he'll be sharing a room with. He then goes to put the trolley away and gets jump scared by a dog in a car, which of course gives Zach his idea for this week.
Zach Stone is gonna be scary, how scary? Very watching Zach will be terrifying, like going to the dentist or talking to women. Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
At Greg's, he and Zach are watching some scare prank videos on YouTube. Zach believes that America wants to see people getting scared, which is true because at the time, scare prank videos were some of the highest performing on YouTube. So dare I say that this is Zach's best idea yet, in terms of how logical it is to actually getting famous? I mean, for the most part, Zach's previous attempts at getting famous have all required a prior skill set. Becoming a chef, he needs to cook. Becoming a recording artist, he needs to be able to make music. And making a sex tape, I guess. But now, all Zach needs to do is pop out and scare someone, and you've got 100,000 views. Back then, that was huge. Zach doesn't seem to like the idea of Greg having a roommate. Presumably, he's worried that Greg will meet someone who's a better best friend than he is. They start to brainstorm who they can scare, and the scene perfectly cuts to Andy. Andy gets home from baseball practice, and from what he can tell, no one is home. Even the camera crew are hiding behind walls. He hears knocking coming from his cupboard, so he opens the door to see Zach dressed as a mummy. Andy isn't scared by this and instead laughs and sprays Zach with a water bottle and jokingly asks if they ran out of Frankenstein costumes. Zach signals to something off the camera which Andy doesn't see, and then the camera pans down to Greg dressed as Frankenstein, slowly pulling himself back under the bed. Andy then says that Zach will never be able to scare him, and they make a bet. If Zach doesn't scare Andy by tomorrow night, Andy gets Zach's room. And if Zach does manage to scare him, Andy has to melt his trophies down into a big sword. Later, Zach and Amy are hanging out and Zach's brainstorming how he's actually going to scare Andy. He has some rough ideas such as using 5 dead cats or covering himself with fake blood while holding a dead cat, but Amy doesn't like any of these, maybe because they all surround dead cats. She asks Zach what Andy is scared of, and Zach knows that he's not scared of anything. When Andy was a lot younger, Zach and Amy would take him trick-or-treating and he'd cry whenever they walked past this one creepy looking house. So assuming he hasn't grown out of that, that's a really good plan. Zach has the idea to even stay the night there rather than just walking past it. Given that it's been 10 years, they're sure he's not going to be scared of it anymore. Now the plan isn't just to do one jump scare and hope that it goes viral, it's to make a full found footage scary movie. As they leave where they're eating, they run into Nick in the car park. The tension between Amy and Nick seems awkward, and based on the text at the bed store, something's up between them. Nick asks if they're still on for tonight, but she says she can't because she's already made plans with Zach. After he leaves, Amy tells Zach that she sometimes feels like Nick just doesn't get her, and Zach tries to comfort her by saying what's not to get. The next day, Zach, Amy, and Andy are sitting at the table talking about how Zach's gonna scare him. He reveals their plan of staying at the creepy house overnight, to which Andy disagrees with. At first, you can see the fear on his face, but when Zach accuses Andy of being too scared, he's in. Zach and Amy go over to Greg's to recruit him for the prank, but he's not interested because he doesn't do scary things. But Zach promises it won't be scary for them, it'll only be scary for Andy. Greg really doesn't want to do it, but Zach brings up how little time they have left before he goes over to college, which guilts him into saying yes. In the next scene, the 3 teens show up early to prepare the house for when Andy shows up. The first line of this scene is Zach saying,
Holy this place is way scarier than I remember.
Which juxtaposes what he literally just said to Greg. They put some scary decorations around and then head back outside ready for Andy. So when he gets here, they can pretend like nothing happened and they're experiencing it for the first time. Andy shows up and they all head in. Zach tries to set the scene with a scary backstory, but ends up reciting the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised.
Andy goes in first and everyone else follows him. Andy immediately catches onto the plan here. It's very obvious it's been decorated by Zach. He's even put scary music on in the background. Zach, Amy, and Greg all pretend to be scared by this, but Andy finds it funny. Zach has even gone to the length of writing "Baseball players beware" on the wall. While setting up their first activity, the gang hears a car honking outside. Amy instantly knows who it is and heads outside. She's greeted by Nick, who is angry that she hasn't been replying to any of his messages, and the fact that she's sleeping here tonight with Zach. Nick asks Amy if this is how she really wants to be spending her night, and she nods, because she's having fun with her best friend. Nick chuckles and leaves. Amy comes back inside to join the rest of the gang. Something's clearly going on between Nick and Amy. Since Amy has now been spending more time with Zach, Nick is worried. Back inside, we see written on the wall, "If your name rhymes with candy, you're dead." I'm sorry. What? Zach isn't smart. They try listening to the spirits just as all the lights go out. Zach, Greg, and Amy are all scared by this, but Andy doesn't react, assuming it's all just part of their setup. Amy whispers nice to Zach, but he says, "I didn't do that." There's another loud bang and the rest of the lights finally go out. Andy is starting to get a little bit more skeptical about whether or not Zach is behind all of this. And Greg, on the other hand, runs out the building. Andy suggests they go upstairs to find the source of the noise, so they reluctantly do so. Andy claims to hear something behind a closed door, and when Zach opens it, they see a rocking baby's crib, so they run back downstairs. Zach and Amy panic and are about to open the door until Andy reminds them that if Zach leaves, Andy gets his room. Amy says they should just leave. Andy's room isn't that much smaller than his, so it's not really worth potentially dying if this is all really a spirit or a ghost or whatever you want to call it. But Zach says this isn't about his room, it's about the trophy sword. Amy tries to open the door, but it's locked anyway. They're completely trapped, they can't find another way out. In panic, Zach grabs Amy and says, "If we die in here, I just want to tell you, and then is cut off by Andy, who thinks he's found another way out, but it's down in the basement. Amy tells Zach to finish what he was going to say, but he won't. The three reluctantly head down to the basement. Zach and Amy lead the way, but stop when there's a sign that says, "He's gone." They turn around to Andy, who's no longer behind them. He starts screaming for help from the other room, and the two rush to find him. But they wish they hadn't, because when they find Andy, he's standing at the front of the building with all of his friends. And it's revealed that Andy was in on all this, and his friends were out the front orchestrating all of this from behind the scenes. Andy walks away successfully, knowing he didn't even flinch once, and knowing that he now owns Zach's room. But a last minute move by Zach. He throws a firecracker near Andy and it pops right next to him, making him jump before he can leave the gate. And Zach fittingly chants,
My room is my room! Trophy, sword!
Which I love. Zach and Amy go back in to clean up, and Zach suggests they leave. But Amy in return says they should stay a bit longer. He sends the camera crew away and they shut the door behind them. Outside, Andy is waiting with the camera crew when he realizes he's left all of his stuff inside, because remember, the original plan was to sleep over there. So he heads back inside and opens the front door to reveal Amy and Zach making out on the steps. Andy shuts the door with a smug smile on his face. Later that night, Zach is over at Greg's, and Greg admits that he was also scared of going off to college. He tells Zach that he's scared to sleep over at someone else's house, and was scared by the pranks he helped set up. So how would he survive sleeping in a college dorm with a complete stranger? Zach tells him that he's gonna be fine because he's brave. Greg asks Zach if anything scary happened after he left. Zach smiles and says yes. And that ends the episode. The whole message of this episode was being brave. While that may seem pretty on the nose, there's a lot more to it than we realize. While a main plot point was Andy trying to prove that he's so brave, braver than Zach, all of the characters in some way or another had something they needed to be brave about outside of the haunted house. Greg was scared about going to college and put on a brave face until he opened up to Zach at the end of the episode. And Amy needed to be brave to realize that Nick isn't the person she wants. Amy and Nick have been off for a while, and it took a haunted house for Amy to realize that she wanted to kiss Zach, even if it was just some dumb little mistake. And for Zach, well, Zach had to be brave so he could get that trophy sword.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Episode 10 is one of my personal favourites, and to start the episode, Zach is happier than usual this morning and being overly nice to everyone. Drew doesn't like it and says that the happier Zach is in the morning, the more miserable everybody else is at night. Andy reveals to the family that he kissed Amy last night at the haunted house. Zach isn't happy that Andy announced this, and Drew and Sydney are shocked initially, but then are happy for him. In the next scene, Zach is talking to Greg about what happened when he left the haunted house. Greg is surprised by this because he had no idea that Zach had feelings for Amy this whole time, even though it was pretty obvious. Greg asks Zach if he's going to put off being famous for a while to focus on being with Amy, but Zach says he's more determined now than he ever has been. Which is great because Greg gives him a flyer that someone left at the store for an open audition for a student film. Zach asks the camera to run back his realization that he's going to become a famous actor.
Zach Stone is gonna be an actor. Zach Stone is gonna be an actor. Being an actor is perfect for Zach because he's good on screen and a little effeminate. Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Over at Greg's, Zach is looking at photos of actors, but Greg is more fixated on whether or not Amy and Zach are actually a couple now. Keep in mind, unless something happened off camera, Amy is still with Nick. Zach answers not really when Greg asks him this, but he also answers not really when he asks Zach if Amy is still with Nick. Zach tells Greg that Amy and her mum left for Maine earlier today, so they haven't been able to talk about it yet. At the audition, Zach leaves Amy a voicemail about last night before heading in. Zach is now on stage for his audition, and the person hosting the audition asks if he has any questions. Zach responds to this by saying, "If you kiss a girl and she has a boyfriend, that means she loves you and hates her boyfriend, right?" They don't know how to answer this and honestly think he's talking about the script and the scene. Zach does his audition and does surprisingly well. I can only assume with what he was saying, he was relating the script to his current situation. The casting director cuts him off and says they've seen all they need to see. Zach tries to go again, but they don't need any more. In the next scene, Zach is seeking out support from everybody's favorite creepy and inappropriate boss, Pat.
What is your shoe size?
He relates to Zach by saying he once slept with a married woman who he never called again after the first date because she was funny looking, which isn't quite as helpful as he thinks. While at the counter, Zach is greeted by none other than Nick. Nick tells Zach that he and Amy had broken up. Nick isn't too beat up about it, but he does seem rightfully upset. Zach says he hopes there's no hard feelings between the two of them, something he really shouldn't have said. When Nick doesn't understand what he meant, Zach clarifies by saying that his plan didn't start with kissing with Amy that night, it just kinda happened. Clearly, Nick had no idea about this, and that's not why they broke up, and starts attacking Zach, which leads to a whole chase around the store. Nick turns to the camera and tells them to keep recording so he can have him kicking the shit out of Zach on camera. Meanwhile, in the background of the store, Zach is shouting to Pat, asking for banana peels.
Pat, I need banana peels right now!
They make a really big mess around the store. Nick is throwing stuff at Zach, Zach is dropping stuff to slow Nick down, and the camera crew are knocking things over trying to keep up with them. Zach slips over and Nick stands above him with his fist ready to punch. When out of nowhere, like a hero from the ashes, comes Pat, holding Nick back to prevent him from beating the shit out of Zach. Pat stands proudly as he sends Nick out of the store. Zach, happy to be alive, is also happy that Amy chose him over Nick. You can't help but feel bad for Nick in this scene. Obviously going to the extent he just did probably wasn't within reason, but he was just dumped by someone he really liked and found out she kissed somebody else. And out of everybody it could have been, it was Zach. While laying on the couch covered in frozen peas, Zach gets a phone call from the audition saying he got the part. Zach is now happier than ever because he's going to be famous and he's in love.
I'm gonna be famous, and I'm in love! Zach Stone! Woo!
Zach tells the camera that he's been romancing America for too long, trying to give them everything he has to offer, but now it's time for him to romance Amy. Sydney gives him some flowers to give to Amy, and even said she always hoped something would happen between the two of them. In the next scene, Zach and Greg are going over the script for the student film. Zach has the idea to play the scene as if it was him and his story, rather than the character. For example, Zach wants to channel his love for Amy in the scene, but in the film, his character doesn't even like the woman he's talking to. While performing the scene, Zach plays the character far too over the top in love, and the director asks him to take it again. The second time isn't much better. The director tells him to play it like he did in the audition, so third time's a charm, right? Nope, Zach pours a cup of water on himself saying, "Women love wet men." In the next scene, Zach tells the camera how the film crew are letting him run it back tomorrow, and that he'll channel his inner Channing Tatum for a later project. This joke has happened twice in the episode so far, where Zach refers to actor Channing Tatum as Tanning Tatum, further acknowledging his very small amount of film knowledge. Zach has decorated Amy's house with all these love-themed decorations because tonight is the night she's coming home. Amy arrives and is not too happy to see Zach. Zach confidently expresses how much he missed Amy and wants to kiss her again, but Amy on the other hand isn't on the same level. She calls what happened the other night a mistake, which brings Zach down. He walks away and Amy asks him not to be angry with her, but he is. He thought he had everything he wanted, even if it was just in his head. For one day he was in love and he was this close to being famous. But Amy stripped that away from him. He accuses Amy of sleeping with guys and not caring about their feelings. Obviously he doesn't mean that, but he's heartbroken and furious. Amy tries apologizing by saying she didn't mean to hook up with him and that it was never her intention to sleep with one guy then move on to the next, like Zach was suggesting. Through tears, she apologizes and says it's all her fault, to which Zach agrees, yeah, it is. He thinks Amy is trying to prove something to herself, then says there's lots of guys in college, you're going to love it, and you can tell instantly that he regretted saying that, but it was too late to take back. Amy says you should leave, so he takes down the decorations and does so, but not before accidentally setting off a boombox.
Amy, you're the one for me. Are you Amy? Oh my! I'm excited to be your boyfriend. Your boyfriend. Your boyfriend. Your boyfriend.
I think this is one of my, if not my all-time favorite scenes in the show. It's well written and beautifully acted by both Bo Burnham and Caitlin Gerald. Zach is back at the diner for the student film, this time with more of an angsty approach. He starts off strong, but his anger gets the best of him. He tells the director to leave the acting to him and calls him a dumb kid with a film crew. The director looks at Zach's camera for this, more than likely saying that that's exactly what Zach is, because Zach is just a dumb kid with a film crew. Zach starts getting overly aggressive at the director and his co-star, then smashes a plate, causing the director to fire him. At home, Zach tells the camera crew that he's going to run an errand so they can take the rest of the day off. Philip asks if he's doing okay. He says yeah, but obviously he's not. He's had everything taken from him within 24 hours. The camera crew end up following him anyway, and through the bushes, we can see that he's gone to Amy's. Zach apologizes for everything he said and tells Amy that he really likes her, and he lashed out because he thinks that deep down, he's not boyfriend material for Amy. Amy clarifies that she didn't want to go forward with Zach not because she wants to be with heaps of different guys like Zach suggested, but because it's just not the right time. They both hug it out and apologize and go back to being best friends. Best friends who kissed once. Back at home, Zach is telling the camera how much of a roller coaster last week was, and when trying to be famous, personal and professional life tend to mix together. While he may not have fame or his dream girl, at least he's learnt that he has to be honest with people. Sydney comforts Zach and asks if he thinks it's going to be weird between the two of them now, but Zach doesn't seem to think so. He asks his mum if she thinks it's going to be weird, but she doesn't have an answer. Zach and Amy are at a coffee shop in the next scene. The tension is very awkward between the two of them, but they try to make plans to hang out. The waitress asks how Zach would like his eggs, and he stares down the camera because that was supposed to be a line in the film. One of his character's lines was talking about how his mind feels scrambled, so when somebody brought up eggs, the first thing that came to his mind was scrambled. And that ends episode 10. I think this is my favourite one so far. It's either between this and Zack Stone's Gonna Get Wild, I think, are my two favourites at the moment. Maybe because this one revolves around acting and I want to be an actor, but also this one has the most emotional weight to it. It opened up both Zack and Amy to emotional levels we haven't seen them before, as it tested their whole friendship and relationship. We've never seen them argue, we've never seen Amy break down, and we've never seen Zack get so angry. And after the episode, it leaves Zack and Amy in a weird spot. They feel very awkward around each other, and for Zack, that's not the only thing he feels around her. But that is something we'll explore in the final 2 episodes of Zack Stone Is Gonna Be Famous, which is the first and only 2-parter of the show.
Zack Stone, Zack Stone.
To start the penultimate episode of the series, Zack is laying on the couch talking to Andy about a dream he had last night. In this dream, he was being chased in a forest by a mob of people, and he sees a light, so he goes and chases it. But when he gets to the light, he realizes it's not a light. It's the O of the Hollywood sign and the beginning of his journey. And the people that were chasing him weren't a mob, they were paparazzi. I'm glad I told you every single detail of that dream. Anyway, Andy didn't want to hear it because he's working on some stuff before he starts school next week. That's right, summer is almost over and Zack Stone isn't going to college and he isn't any closer to becoming famous. Although he's thinking on the bright side, because after 10 failed attempts at becoming famous, he's got to get a win somewhere, right? Drew comes into the room angry because Zack left the aircon on with the windows open, wasting money. He tells Zack to just buy himself a fan, and then Zack says, just wait, in a week I'll have 1 million fans. Which is funny because next week is the final episode of the show. Is that maybe foreshadowing? You'll have to keep watching to find out. Zack turns on the TV to see a man being interviewed. The tag on the screen says Jeffrey Scott, local hero. Zack sees this and listens to how a man saved some kids from a burning building. In the Zack Stone fashion we know and love, he jumps up with his next big idea. While he's leaving the room, Andy tells Zack not to light the house on fire, because after everything he's already done, that doesn't seem too outlandish. But luckily, Zack says, don't worry, it's been done, and looks off dramatically into the distance as we get our title sequence.
Zack Stone is gonna be a hero. Have no fear, oh, Zack is hero. If you don't think that Zack can save you, you don't deserve him. Have fun dying. Zack Stone, Zack Stone.
He bursts into Greg's room who is packing for college and he says he has the idea. In the show, Zack is yet to have the idea. It's always just been an idea or an attempt at getting famous. But he genuinely thinks this is the idea. He tells Greg that he's a big part of the plan, but Greg tells him he can't because he's too busy packing for college. Zack says to Greg that if this isn't actually the idea, the next time he has what he thinks is the idea, Greg won't be there because he'll be off at college, so they don't have that much time left. Zack pleads for help from Greg, and he reluctantly agrees. At the store, Greg is looking for some essential things to take with him for college, and Zack is looking for hero stuff. This is where we're greeted with the presence of everybody's favorite boss, Pat.
What is your shoe size?
Pat tells Zack that he has some good news for him and asks if he's seated. He offers Zack a promotion to become assistant manager. Pat is excited about this, Zack not so much. probably because he doesn't see himself working at a grocery store for the rest of his life. So they share a nice, weirdly long hug.
It was always you.
Not that much fun, is it?
Okay. All right.
Then, Zach and Greg go their separate ways, and Zach tells him to change into some other clothes. Zach is telling the camera how everybody loves a hero and compares himself to Sully and Jesus. He gets a knock on his door from Amy. She invites him to an end of summer barbecue she's throwing to say goodbye to the summer and hello to college. The tension between the two after last episode still seems a bit rocky, but Zach agrees to come to the party. Amy asks him if he has any more plans at becoming famous, and then Zach says he doesn't. Amy suggests she gets out of his hair and asks if their friendship is okay. And Zach says yes to this, but again, he doesn't have any confidence behind what he's saying. The awkwardness from this relationship really seems to be coming just from Zach's end. Obviously, he loves Amy, but he knows to respect her boundaries and not to act on his feelings, which is making it hard for him to be around her. Zach heads downstairs ready to meet Greg, but is stopped by Sydney and Drew in the living room. They want to speak to him without the cameras, but Zach, being Zach, won't allow it. Drew tells Zach that he's out of money. They say he's got $1,500 left in his bank account, and they suggest he stops paying his camera crew to save his money and any other money he gets from here on out. And it seems like Zach's promotion has come at a good time because he's in desperate need of money. He tells his parents that he can't stop paying his camera crew because he has the idea that will make him famous. Sydney tells him that if he keeps the cameras and the crew, he'll have $0 by next week. But Zach insists that if he keeps the cameras and the crew, he'll have $1 million by next week. Sydney, as she usually does, takes a softer approach on Zach, saying they can't tell him what to do with his money, but they can strongly suggest that he becomes more sensible with it. But Drew steps in and tells him that they can tell him what to do with his money, and if it comes down to it, they won't bail him out if he's really desperate. Zach storms out of the house and says he's going to get famous to prove to his parents that he's not a complete idiot like they think he is. In the next scene, Zach is wearing the most American clothes you could ever possibly see, while Greg is left semi-drowning in a pond. He starts pretending to drown and Zach is about to dive in to save him, but he realizes he has his cell phone in his pocket, so he wants to retake the shot but goes to the bathroom first. Take 2 of this scene and Zach dives in to save Greg, but gets caught on some seaweed. The whole thing is just a complete mess. It looks extremely staged, but at least Zach thinks he looks like a hero. Zach wants to take the scene again, but Greg really doesn't want to because, first of all, he needs to go pack for college, and second of all, he doesn't want to pretend to drown anymore. Greg gets angry at Zach because his stuff is never as important as Zach's stuff, which is completely valid. Every time Zach has this bright idea, Greg has to drop everything and say yes to it regardless of what he wants to do. At the moment, it seems like everybody is against Zach. His relationship with Amy isn't doing too well, his parents are becoming more strict than ever about his dreams to become famous, and now Greg finally stands up for himself. And it doesn't get any better from here. When he gets home later, Sydney tells Zach that Pat called and told him the good news about his promotion. Zach tells Drew and Sydney that he's not going to take the promotion because if he does, he'll be stuck working at a grocery store for the rest of his life. Drew tells Zach that he needs a job and he needs income, but Zach assures them that fame will give him the income that he needs. His parents look at each other disappointed. Zach sees this and tells them that them not believing in him becoming famous doesn't upset him. What hurts him the most is that they aren't even rooting for him. Zach has made some poor decisions, you can't deny that, and he's making one at the moment, but after 11 attempts, his family haven't been on his side in a single one. The next scene takes place at Amy's barbecue, and Zach is talking to Amy's uncle. He asks Zach where he's going to college, but Zach just replies, straight to the top. Amy comes up to Zach and they catch up a little bit. He tells Amy that he and Greg were at the pond at an attempt at becoming famous. And Amy replies to this by saying she thought they had no plans at becoming famous, because that's what Zach told her more or less an hour ago. Amy's mum asked the two to pose for a photo and they do so. Very, very awkwardly. Zach asks to talk to Amy somewhere private, so they head inside the cubby house they used to play when they were kids. Zach says he can't do this anymore. He doesn't know what Amy wants their relationship to be. Zach really likes Amy, and she just kind of left him out to dry after they kissed. I'm not saying she should be with Zach because whether she is or not is completely up to her, regardless of what Zach wants. But Zach can't put on a smile and act like he wants to be just friends. They both agree that it's really weird between the two of them, and with Amy leaving for college in a few days, they don't have that much time to make things right. So Zach suggests that they take some time away from each other. Zach tells her that he wants her to have a good time at college, but I think deep down Zach knows that Amy's better off without him, without the cameras, without the show, without Zach. Zach submits a videotape of him being a hero to WHBH Channel 4, the local news station. In the lobby, he runs into a woman who seems very interested as to why Zach is being filmed. Zach then goes to talk to the workers there, saying he'd like to submit himself for a hero story, and they say they'll check it out, but then instantly throw it in the bin the second Zach leaves. Zach sees this and cuts his cameras. In the next scene, back at home, Zach is gathering all of the camera crew's belongings as he's not going to have them around for much longer. He finds his middle school time capsule in his cupboard and opens it up to see a whole bunch of memorable items and photos, including one of him and Greg. And this makes him emotional. Zach goes over to Greg's to help him pack and gives him the photo of the two of them. They hug it out and finally forgive each other for what happened at the pond, but back at home it's not so forgiving. Zach comes downstairs to his family in his new assistant manager uniform, which means he's obviously taken the job. Zach is giving up on being famous and is accepting the assistant manager job. Andy pulls an I told you so on Zach and tells him that he knew he'd never become famous. And Drew says he's doing the right thing. And while his family think that, Zach doesn't know how to feel yet. His dream of becoming famous is more or less over, and he's not going to be famous when the summer ends. Maybe sometime in the future Zach Stone will be famous, but for now, Zach Stone is the assistant regional manager at DeSanto's grocery store. Zach has to leave for work, and as he's leaving, there's a ring on the doorbell. He opens it on his way out, and it's the woman he ran into at the news station. She comes in with a camera crew and says they need footage for a story she's doing. When Zach asks what the story's about, she replies, "You." And Zach turns to the camera with a big grin on his face, ending the second last episode of the show. With only one episode left and just about a week before the summer ends, our characters are all in very different places as they were at the start of the show, or even last episode. The family doesn't believe in Zach, which, I mean, we've seen that all season, but today was the last straw with them. Greg is now confident enough to stand up for himself, so unlike what he thinks, he's going to be fine in college. Amy and Zach, well, they aren't speaking right now, but that's because Zach wants what's best for her, because that's what Zach does. Deep down, he cares about the people in his life. We saw him put Greg and Amy's feelings first, and even accept defeat when it struck him. When the whole world seemed against him, he knew that all he needed to do was the sensible option. But now, out of nowhere, the news wants to do a story on Zach. This could either be huge for Zach or leave him right back where he started. So let's find out and jump into the series final of Zach Stone is Gonna Be Famous.
Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Whether you've sat through this whole video or you've just skipped to the end to see how it all wraps up, we are at the final episode of the show, episode 12. To start this episode, Sydney, Drew and Andy are all sitting around the table for breakfast, when Zach proclaims that just a week ago he had no money, no home, a brother who looked like a poor man's Andrew Garfield, and had no one believing in him, except for himself. But he's found a way to keep hopeful that one day he'll be famous. He tells the family about how he's being interviewed tomorrow by the news station. After a long summer of failed attempts, this could be really it for Zach. They're filming at the house, which the family isn't too happy about, but he ensures them that they want to meet the people who made him into what he is today.
Oh my God, does anyone hear that? Is that a theme song?
No.
Zach Stone is gonna be famous. No, really, he's gonna be famous. Zach Stone is gonna be famous. Zach Stone is gonna be famous. Zach Stone, Zach Stone.
Zach comes into work late and Pat tells him that there's no hard feelings for passing on the manager position. So we can only assume after the ending of last episode, Zach's just said, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm going to be famous. Sorry, Pat. They start talking about what Zach is going to be like after he's on the news. Zach asks Pat if he can talk to him really quick, but also asks the cameras to cut, and this is one of the few times where they actually do so. After their conversation we don't see, Zach goes outside and talks about backing himself and doubling down. So we can only assume this means he quit his job altogether. He heads into the car and is shocked to find Amy in there. He says he doesn't have anything else to say to her, but she tells him that he can drive up to her on weekends, and also tells him what holidays she has off for college, so they can hang out then. Amy finishes this by telling Zach that even though he said they shouldn't be friends, she doesn't think they should be either. And she says this with the biggest smile, so we know what she means by this. With Amy leaving tomorrow, Zach seems unsure about this. Amy tells him that he doesn't have to answer now, and asks him what he's doing tomorrow morning. And this is where Zach tells her that he's being profiled by Channel 4, and she laughs because Zach has said some pretty wild things before, so this could easily be seen as a joke. She realizes he's being serious, and Zach seems pretty disappointed at the fact that she would just assume it was a joke. Later, Zach wakes up Andy because today is his big day. Zach tells Andy that he needs a complete overhaul to prevent him from embarrassing Zach when they go on camera. Andy has a go at Zach about how he's the embarrassing one, and how he's had multiple conversations with his parents about how to talk to Zach without hurting his feelings. He tells Zach that their mum had to beg him to be on the news just to make Zach happy, and overall, he's the one that's embarrassed to have Zach as a brother. Zach tells Andy that he doesn't want him to be on the show anyway. Downstairs, Zach tells the cameras how today's the biggest day of his life, and Drew is more concerned about what he's going to do tomorrow, after the biggest day of his life. Zach is optimistic that once he goes on TV, opportunities will be flying at him. Drew really thinks he should take that promotion because it's the safe option, and this is where Zach reveals to him that he quit altogether, which, as you expect, makes him really mad, but luckily, this is when the doorbell rings. You would expect it to be the news crew, but actually it's a delivery for a new couch that Sydney ordered. Drew is angry that Sydney bought a new couch without consulting them, and when they didn't even need one. Drew also tells Sydney that Zach quit his job, but before she gets mad, Marcus comes downstairs as the new and recast Andy. Everybody is mad in this situation. Drew and Sydney are mad at Zach, and Drew is mad at Sydney. And just at the wrong time, the camera crew show up. The family sit down for an interview and it's off to a rocky start. For example, Zach has given them all palm cards to read from. Zach and the family get asked some questions and overall, it's not going well. They move on to getting some B-roll footage and, as usual, it goes wrong. This scene is between Zach and Drew and they're in the tool shed. They get into an argument over some equipment that Zach uses wrong. But Zach covers this by saying despite their arguments, his dad supports him and lets him do what he wants to do. Drew tells the cameras that this isn't true. Zach tries to pass him off as the model father, but we all know he's not, and Zach knows he's not. Drew said he needs to leave and walks out of the room looking for Sydney. He tells Sydney that they're leaving, their own house. Drew thinks they're doing what they always do, giving into Zach's weird and crazy ideas, and they're letting yet another camera crew film their daily lives. Sydney tries to stand up for Zach by telling Drew how big of an opportunity this is for him, but they get into an argument over Zach. One part of the argument is defending Zach's ideas because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make their son the most happy. And the other says they're giving into his delusions and are, quote, raising a homeless person. Sydney tells Drew that it's just for one more day, but Drew says they've been putting up with it for months and they need to draw the line somewhere and put the family first rather than doing what they always do and putting Zach first. The news team are actually watching all of this and suggest taking a break. But Zach tries to stop his mum and dad from arguing and tells them that they're both being selfish by having this conversation now. This, sadly, is the last straw for Sydney, and she agrees to leave. After months of siding with Zach and defending him, she hears the truth in what Drew is saying, and deep down knows it's for the best. Zach is upset with her for this. While he expected it from his dad, he didn't expect it from his mum. Now the crew is left with just Zach, while the camera crew plays baseball outside with his equipment. Amy comes up to them and asks them about Zach, and they tell her that he's not doing great in there. She says she'll have a quick peek in to see how it's going. Back inside, the camera crew asks Zach why he wants to be famous. And he answers with this really nice quote.
Because if everyone's looking at you, you gotta be doing something right with your life.
He tells the camera crew that the more he does this sort of thing, the more he realizes he wants to do it alone. Just as he says this, Amy pokes her head in and hears what he's saying and shuts the door, not to be seen by Zach. Later, Zach goes over to Amy's, but she's already left for college. But through the window, we see what Zach doesn't, and she hasn't actually left for college, she just doesn't want to speak to Zach. Next, Zach is over at Greg's for their last sleepover together. He tells Greg how he feels, that nobody is supporting him, and that his family doesn't care about his dreams and never has. And he feels like everybody he cares about is, in one way or another, giving up on him. Except Greg. Now Zach is at the news station getting his makeup done. Although he doesn't actually get any makeup done because he's been wearing foundation all summer. While waiting to sit down for his interview, he watches as they play this short introduction video to Zach and his family. It covers all the basic stuff we already know, like how Zach is going to pursue filmmaking rather than going to college, even though everybody around him is going to college. So we already know this, so I won't cover that part. But they also include talking heads from his loved ones. They all say really nice things, which surprises Zach. Drew talks about how Zach has character and determination. Sydney talks about how Zach is full of love and is an amazing son, brother, and friend. But then, out of nowhere is an interview from Andy, and not Marcus Andy, Andy. This especially is what catches Zach's eye, as Andy talks about how he's always thought, despite how much they don't get along, that one day he would turn on the TV and see Zach, and be proud to say, that's my brother. Zach is overwhelmed after hearing these words from his family that he never thought he would hear, words of support. But it's not over yet. Zach is looking down to comprehend what Andy and his parents just said, but he lifts his head when he hears a familiar voice on the TV, Amy's. She tells the cameras how she's never met anybody like Zach, and all she wants is for Zach to find what truly makes him happy. And now it's Zach's turn on TV. Zach's long-awaited moment under the spotlight that we've waited 12 episodes to see. His first ever TV appearance. With America's attention on him, he can say whatever he wants to say, what he's been trying to say all of this time. I'm not going to play the full clip because I really suggest you go and watch this scene for yourself because it is a beautiful scene. I'll cover the basics, but I don't want to give the performance or anything like that away because the way Bo performs this scene is incredible. This is the first time anybody is listening to Zach. even though he and America have been talking all summer. He tells the camera that the video they just showed doesn't show what his life is really like. The house is usually messy, and more often than not, someone is fighting with someone, and it's usually because of him. But they still said those nice things. And the girl they showed at the end isn't just any girl. That's Amy. Zach always thought that this moment right now, sitting in front of cameras with all eyes on him, that this would be his moment. The biggest moment in his whole life. But now that he's there, there's only one thing he can think about. Not fame, not the cameras. Amy. And Amy's somewhere else. Because he loves her. And Zach decides he needs to tell her that. Because maybe being famous isn't the most important thing for Zach. Amy is. He leaves the interview, says goodbye to his camera crew, and is about to say the final goodbye to the show he's been making for the last few months, just as Amy walks in. They kiss, and Zach tells Amy how he's not going to try to become famous anymore. Because Zach Stone doesn't need to be famous. Zach Stone just needs to be Amy's. Officially, they are finally, after 12 episodes, boyfriend and girlfriend. It was a long and bumpy road, but they got there in the end. The two walk out of the building hand in hand as Zach says his final goodbye to the cameras. Zach Stone may not be famous, but at least he has what he really wanted deep down. Amy. This whole time, while he was trying to be famous, he wanted to be this big TV personality, but all he wanted really was Amy. But wait, as the two leave the front gates, a group of fans catch the two kissing and clap, take photos, ask Zach about the interview, and even ask for his autograph. This is everything Zach has wanted all summer. The girl of his dreams, and to finally have people see him. He sings his theme song as he signs autographs. The camera pans over to Amy. The smile slowly fades from Amy's face, as she wonders if their reunion was just another one of Zach's attention-seeking schemes. And it ends there. That's the cliffhanger of the episode that the show ends on. We never got to find out where fame took Zach. We never got to see where Amy and Zach's relationship ended up. Nothing. After 12 episodes, 11 attempts at getting famous, and one dream, Zach Stone has all he wants. For now.
Zach Stone is gonna be famous.
And that was all 12 episodes of Zach Stone is Gonna Be Famous, but now we're taking a bit of a darker turn and talking about the end of the show. Because on the 26th of June 2013, MTV officially cancelled Zach Stone after just one season. Zach Stone is Gonna Be Famous received generally positive reviews from critics. It was praised for its timing, its freshness, and its relatability for the youth. As for the fans, the episodes and the series as a whole was really well received by them. The main problem is, not enough people were tuning in to watch it. While there's not a single episode that dips under 8 out of 10 on IMDb and really anywhere else I could find, that can only say so much when the show's peak only hit 65,000 viewers. And that was the pilot episode of the series. It just kept going downhill from there. The views may have dropped from there, but the ratings, the reviews, and in my opinion, the overall quality definitely didn't. But I know you're wondering, I haven't seen many of these actors do much since this show. Where are they all now?
Zach Stone is gonna be famous.
That's kind of a mixed bag. Zach Stone himself, played by Bo Burnham, is pretty obvious. Bo has appeared as an actor in quite a few productions, as well as doing his own comedy shows, Words, 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 What, Make Happy, and Inside. And will apparently be writing music for the Sesame Street movie coming out it's supposed to be coming out this year. It's the first time hearing of it, but apparently it's this year. Both before and after the show, Carrie Coleman, who plays Sydney Stone, played Helen Stacy, Gwen Stacy's mum in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And aside from a few TV shows, she hasn't really done anything of note since 2019. Tom Wilson, who plays Drew Stone, is probably the biggest name out of this bunch. You may know Tom Wilson from having played Biff Tannen in the Back to the Future trilogy before the show, as well as appearing on the DC show Legends of Tomorrow, and being a regular cast member on SpongeBob between 2001 and 2021. Andy Stone, who is Cameron Pilatus behind the scenes, was on a few episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously, I'm not going to cover every single thing these actors do, just the things of note, and Cameron Pilatus hasn't done too much. Armin Weitzman, who plays Greg, played reoccurring characters on shows such as Love, Another Period, and Silicon Valley, with a number of random roles scattered in between. Caitlin Gerald, who plays Amy, has appeared on American Crime and The Last Ship, and not much else. Rory Scovel, who plays Pat, has had quite a few roles, but nothing major. He's just filling out his resume, leave him alone, man. And he's even got some in production, so things are looking good for Pat.
What is your shoe size?
Next, Robbie Amell is also another big-ish name to come from the show, playing the superhero Firestorm on DC's The Flash, starring in 2019's Code 8, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, but that's not why we're here, and leading the Amazon Prime show Upload. Shelley Henning, who gave us Christy Ackerman, has had nearly 500 appearances on Days of Our Lives. She was a regular on Teen Wolf and has a number of other TV and movie appearances. She also did a movie not too long ago with co-star Robbie Amell titled When We First Met. Just thought I'd throw that one in there as well. As for the camera crew, well, they haven't really done much besides a few small appearances. Ashim Aslid was on an episode of The Big Bang Theory. Justin Trey was an extra in Ad Astra, so that's pretty cool. And Jason Rogel was in The Mistletones. Oh, also, Nelson Franklin, who plays the director of the student film Zach was trying to get into in episode 10, was in the US version of The Office, one of my favorite shows, one of everybody's favorite shows. He was also in The Millers, New Girl, Veep, and Blackish.
Zach Stone is gonna be famous.
Zach Stone is going to be famous was commissioned in 2010, filmed in 2012, and released in 2013. But even after 9 years off of television, I think it's more relevant now than it was back then. Given how accessible the internet is nowadays, the majority of people who actually use the internet use it to be seen in one way or another. Hell, you're looking at one of those people right now. And with things like Vine, TikTok, and YouTube, millions of people upload millions of videos every single day. Bo Burnham has been avid about how the internet is bad for people and it's far too accessible, therefore harming people. And frankly, that's what the majority of his work is based on, the internet. He started his career in YouTube and then moved to making fun of it and talking down to social media as a whole. And that's a large part of what his special from 2021 Inside is revolving around. The desire for people to use a platform for the sake of having a platform, and the overall mindset of having, and pun intended, all eyes on me. If you don't believe me, listen to Welcome to YouTube, or Welcome to the Internet, or Art is Dead, or however many of Bo's songs that revolve around the internet doing bad things for people rather than it doing good things for people. Bo even created a show all about that topic, the show you just watched today. Sharing your life on social media, no matter how much you shelter your true self from it, it's stress-inducing, it's harmful, and it's an addicting thing. And if Bo doesn't convince you, take it from me.
Zach Stone is gonna be famous.
What I love the most about Zach Stone is going to be famous is its relatability. I see myself in Zach more than I see myself in any other character from any show that I've seen or studied before. Zach's desire to be seen, his relationship with his mum, his dad, his sibling, his self-sabotage nature, the way he puts himself first and ultimately regrets it, and most of all, how he just wants to make people laugh. That's why I relate to this show so much, because of this character. Because that's all Zach wanted, to entertain people and to make them laugh, no matter how much it destroyed his relationships and himself.
Zach Stone is gonna be famous.
To conclude, Zach Stone is going to be famous is going down as one of my all-time favorite shows and definitely one of the most underrated shows I've ever seen. I really cannot recommend this show enough. In fact, I wouldn't be making this video if I truly wasn't passionate about this show. But that is all we have time for. That was the show. That was Zach Stone is going to be famous. That was it. All footage, all media, all music, all sound doesn't belong to me. It is 100% going to their owners. Obviously, I'm not going to make any money off this, so I think it is allowed. But I just wanted to clarify that all footage and media doesn't belong to me and is 100% credited to the hardworking people who worked on this show back in the day. Speaking of hardworking, I've been working on this show since the 27th of May. I don't know when this is going up. That may either be little time or a long time, but either way, I would really, really appreciate a like if you did go on to enjoy it because this has taken me months to do. It was a monster of a video. It's probably the longest I've ever worked on a video, but it was worth it because I got to analyze this show that I love. That is the end. I want to thank you all very much for watching and I'll see you all next week. Bye for now.